Let's get ready to rumble! Good evening, everybody here. Happy April Fool's Day. Certainly, if you were in the tri-state area, the second half of the day definitely felt like April Fool's weather, and there is no better way, I think, to spend a Friday night and get the weekend going here with Sportswire Radio, and we are on Twitter, LinkedIn. We are on YouTube. We are on the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel. We are also, of course, on our flagship home, sportinarium.com/player. And I'm with three of my favorites. And Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show. You've heard Justin's show here throughout the week. Really enjoyed the episode. Very good work, Justin, once again.
Thank you.
Long Island's own the brute force Brad Weiss, who's got a catch. He's always got a catch while he's wearing something. I was thinking, Brad, put the SJC gear on, like I got my Golden Eagle shirt on, but you have a Knicks shirt on. But we'll get to that. And of course, the brute force with the legendary LI Brew Crew, our boys, and also Level Up, the Long Island Nets, Plainview JFK High School boys JV team, and much, much more. And Chris Bazea of the Talking Rival Show. Great show this week also by the guys. Listened to that a few times while I was getting ready throughout the morning to get my nap through. And we've got a comment already in here, so I'll get to that also. And that is Jason Gordieso, the coach of the SJC Golden Eagles men's basketball assistant coach. Brad, you want to answer Coach Gordieso there on that?
I will. It is a Carmelo Anthony jersey. It's the last Knicks jersey I own. So yeah, you guys will see. We're going to hold this for later in the show, but you'll see why I'm wearing it and what's going to happen to it a little bit later.
All I want to say is before you do anything, and I know that the forces are going to be listening to this. I know that Aunt Laura is going to be listening to this. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. That's all I'm going to say.
No, I won't be doing that. I won't be setting a fire or anything like that. But
right,
I won't be on fire when it comes to my take. Don't worry.
Because I do have a fire story. It's a funny fire story, but I'll save it for later because we just got on the air and it's kind of funny in retrospect. But obviously, good to be with everybody here tonight on a rather interesting Friday night here. And I've got another comment from Coach Gordieso. Coach is on fire here. And I was speaking with Coach during the week. And also, got to give a shout out to Coach Gordieso because he is a Villanova Wildcats alum and a fan of the team. And of course, they're in the Final Four here, and he says, that's it. The poster's coming down now. Coach, we think alike. That poster, I don't even know how it's still up. You want to respond real quick, Brad, while I get recalibrated?
Well, listen, you know what? That poster, all right, that poster is legendary. It can't come down yet, all right? It can't come down just yet. But in the end, we all know what poster should come down, but it's not the poster at SJC Long Island, I'll tell you that.
All right, well, certainly fair enough here, and obviously we have a lot to get into here tonight. Also want to give a shout-out to John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group. Also, Rob Marosca we'll hear from here at 10:30, of course, to speak about some baseball and much, much more here. And I want to obviously very quickly for everybody here in terms of Major League Baseball, and we'll get to basketball. We'll bounce around college basketball and such. And for Justin first here, obviously Baseball Banter Show, really enjoyed the show here. Obviously, with opening day next week, give me a couple of storylines you're watching.
Well, one of the storylines actually came out of a trade today. And, you know, this is funny. This is one of the things that I mentioned on the episode Wednesday and that you've heard all week is that, you know, for the first time in years, whether it was Don Mattingly, now it's Dave Roberts at the helm for the Los Angeles Dodgers. You know, you look in that bullpen, 74 was always out there, Mr. Kenley Jansen. And for the first time, you know, that's not the case. Now, I was speculating that Blake Trinan would take over as the closer. But now we get the news today that Craig Kimbrell gets traded from the Chicago White Sox to the LA Dodgers, sending A.J. Pollock the other way, which kind of clears up some of the outfield space, gets Gavin Lux some at-bats. So that's a storyline to watch is, you know, what the Dodgers do in their bullpen because, you know, the Dodgers are heavy favorites. They're to be one of the best teams. And I think another storyline just coming quickly out of them before I move on to one other storyline throughout the rest of the league is how bad Cody Bellinger's looked. And, you know, you don't normally take stock in spring training stats.
I know. What is he have, like 3 hits this spring training? What is it, like 3 foot with like 25 strikeouts? I mean, it's like, crazy.
Yeah, it's
Since he
like
won the
something like
MVP,
22
it's
at bats or 27 at bats, 22 strikeouts, or something like
Mhm.
that. It's really crazy. You don't usually take much stock into spring training stats, but there's legitimate concern on his part, and by no means should he be guaranteed any form of starting role. I mean, you want to play Chris Taylor in left field, Gavin Lux in center. That's fine by me. I know they obviously now have to fill the DH spot, with the universal DH in the National League. But I think that's one of the bigger storylines to watch. And let's not sugarcoat it. The Mets now have a storyline without Jacob deGrom.
Yeah, I mean, I saw obviously Chris and Ernest going back and forth with that, and Ernest, of course, who does some
And
shows for us.
and listen, I would say a good 15-minute stretch last night between the Nets giving the game away and the Jacob deGrom news completely destroyed my Thursday night. I mean, it was unbelievable how all that just like came crashing down on me at once.
Well, that's certainly almost kind of like the weather, where it was all of a sudden it came down heavy with rain, and sort of that was the moment there. But let's piggyback off that, and I'm sure Rob Maraska will have his thoughts here in about, I guess, 45 or so minutes. And Chris, I saw you going back and forth with Ernest Dove. Again, Ernest Dove, who does some work for us here covering the minor leagues. He's an accredited member of the media who covers an affiliate in the Mets organization. And Jacob deGrom, I mean, this is a story for Mets fans and even for baseball fans as a whole, it's certainly one you don't wish for. And certainly if you're a Mets fan, it's one you really, really weren't hoping for. And how big of a story is this?
It's huge. It's absolutely huge because you went from having a 1-2 of Scherzer and deGrom to now Scherzer and a question mark. Like deGrom, it could be out all year. It could be a couple of months.
By the way, you might not have either on opening day.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? With deGrom, I know on the Michael Kay show they made it they brought it up that Michael Wacha had the same injury as deGrom, and he was out 10 weeks.
So same with Zach Wheeler. I don't remember the exact timeline.
Yeah,
Zach Wheeler had the same issue as well. So
you figure at the very least it's probably going to be 10 weeks. It's probably going to be longer because they could probably all right, we could just to be on the safe side, we'll push him out. But it's definitely huge. I mean,
that's
we're talking about a guy
who right there. Listen, 3 months. If
you're looking at post All-Star break. For me, you're looking at post All-Star break at the earliest.
Yeah, and listen, if that's what it is, you know what they should think about maybe getting a veteran in, or are they going to just bring someone up? But it's definitely huge because this is a guy that's been easily, the best pitcher in the majors the last few years. But
when he's healthy,
when he's healthy, right? Unfortunately, he's missed a lot of games too. So to me, I just hope he doesn't turn out to be like that what if story. Like, man, this guy was so dominant, but he just couldn't stay healthy, But
hey, look, I mean, Billy Epler already has Billy Bean on speed dial. He acquired Chris Bassett.
Yeah, right.
why not go get Sean Manaea?
Oh, absolutely. It's probably going to cost somebody that you don't want to trade, but at this point, you know what? You guys are all in this year, all in it for this year now anyway, so you may as well go for it. I would definitely think about it. I mean, Johnny Cueto is still out there, right, as a free agent, so maybe
that's only money, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a possibility too. And you know what? And getting back to that trade with the Dodgers, I'm not too. I don't know. With Kimbrel, he didn't look so hot after he got traded to the White Sox last year, right? I mean,
I was going to say he got hit.
Yeah, so
it wasn't great, I will say, but I think it does add a veteran presence and a veteran 1-2 punch with him and Blake Trinan. And if Dave Roberts wants to, he can mix and match. I mean, he's got options now.
I really thought it was going to be what's his name, Gruderall, taking over the cover.
Brusdar Graterol.
The closer role.
I mean, he's certainly an option as well, especially as hard as he throws.
They might, like you said, they might just mix and match early on and see who kind of, catches on with the role and then takes off with it. But it was definitely a good trade. And I was surprised the White Sox weren't they set with the outfield? I was surprised. Right? Their
Um,
outfield, they got Jimenez,
Luis Robert.
Lewis Robert, and
I mean, I think Adam Eaton was projected right field. I mean, not the AJ Pollock, definitely upgrade over that.
yeah.
But
hey, you know what? That's he obviously wasn't working there for whatever reason. He wasn't comfortable there. So maybe in LA, he'll find his stuff because he was pitching pretty good early in the season. So
he had a good first half with the Cubs.
Yeah,
he finished with a sub-3 ERA. I mean,
right.
for the year, he finished a 2.26 ERA. But he went from having a 0.49 ERA with the Cubs to going to 5.09 with the White Sox.
That's a big jump.
Something wasn't right. I mean,
something definitely wasn't right. But I want to get a few shout outs in here. First one I want to read off is, of course, Mr. John Gonzalez of the Sports Authority group. And, of course, Chris is a moderator there. I'm a moderator there, but unfortunately, I really haven't gone on there much. Sorry, John. I've been busy. Give me a couple days, and I'll be back to speed here. But he says, the Brute getting his own sports show on ESPN, April Fool's Day. I thought that was great. And, of course, our very, very dear friend, Mr. Anthony J. Finkel, who we have a plug for in a little while as usual, says, let's go Friday night sports night with the boys. Checking in from Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And I comment, Anthony, by any chance, are you by Joe's Pizza out there? I think that's a little more near Greenpoint. But I'm almost wondering, what are you doing in Williamsburg? And you're with us here. So, I mean, obviously, shout out. And I got another comment from Anthony Finkel in here just for you, Brad. He says, Brute Force, why no Julius Randle jersey? I mean, you want to respond to that?
I'm going to save my thunder and lightning for later in the show, but listen, ain't no way I'm wearing no damn Julius Randle.
You should tell Anthony Finkel that you were at the game on Wednesday. Obviously, Madison Square Garden was lucky to be graced by your appearance. I mean, certainly.
Very, very lucky. Trust me. Very lucky that I spent my money. Lucky James Dolan, who was not too far from me in the crowd. Lucky that I stayed quiet because he was probably going to ban me for life. But ultimately, listen, all right, I'll address the Knicks a little bit later. But ultimately, Julius Randle, I'll just say one thing. I was one of the guys booing on Wednesday night. That's for sure.
I was tagged on Instagram, and I had like 4 Instagram stories of it. I was like, I was watching.
Didn't that loss snap their 5-game winning streak?
Yeah, they were playing well, actually. They were playing pretty well.
4-game winning streak. So clearly, Brad's the curse.
I'm not too upset with it.
Anthony chimes in here, still on the job, running my garbage route long day. Yeah, you know what? I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, so I was literally done where I had to do about an hour before we had to go on live. So listen, obviously he's working hard out there. We have a plug for that as well in a little while. So we want to obviously commend Anthony Finkel for giving time to us. And obviously those Knicks, I mean, interesting New York Knicks. We'll definitely get into that, I'm sure, in a little while as well. Maybe just before Rob Maraska comes on here. We have a little bit more flexibility and time. In the meantime, I also want to give a few plugs also to Desmond Johnson of Tobacco Road Sports Radio. Obviously, always lucky to be on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and all the great things that they do for us. You can catch us there, obviously, 12:30 p.m. Saturdays. We're on there 12:30 Saturdays on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. Also, make sure to follow Desmond Johnson on Facebook and the Tobacco Road Sports Radio page. Also want to shout out Linda and Mac McGrath of the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel. We are usually on there Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, but it is WrestleMania weekend, and they have a bunch of WrestleMania shows that they're going to cover, and we have an announcement later on for the Sportswire radio dial with that, which I kind of mentioned on Twitter later on. So want to make sure I acknowledge Linda and Mac McGrath. They also play the Talking Rivals show on there, the Pinstripe Chronicles show. They also play a work in progress. Want to make sure I acknowledge all those great people there as well. And the Brute Force, I want to ask you very quickly on Jacob deGrom. And I know we'll get into this with Rob Maraska. I mean, you were an athlete. You've obviously had some injuries you've dealt with. I mean, Jacob deGrom has a history of injuries. He certainly started his career a little bit later than most. I mean, how concerned would you be right now if you were Jacob deGrom?
Very concerned. I would be very concerned because of the fact that we now have a trickling effect on injuries, especially these last two. When you're talking about the elbow and the shoulder, that's directly with the arm motion, which is exactly what Jacob deGrom does, which is pitch. It just continues to be, issue after issue with his arm. And that's not good if you're a Mets fan, or it's not good if you're him. because ultimately, listen, he's one of the best pitchers in the game, for the last many years. He's the best pitcher in the game right now by far. But the one thing that we know, Tom Bryce, is that he throws hard. He's a really good pitcher with his pitches, and ultimately, is that leading to his injuries? Who knows? Maybe he's pressing too much. But ultimately, it's something, like I said, when it comes to injury, especially when, the Mets did what they did. They brought, Steve Cohen's now the owner of the team. You're talking about all these additions that they have. Look at the players in spring training right now that are looking really good. And then your best player, who, again, you need him to win. And everyone knows it. Jacob deGrom knows it, that if he's not on the mound, it's going to severely hurt his team. And ultimately, that's the worst part as a player, is just knowing that you're out and you're really hurting your team. So for Jacob deGrom, he just needs to get healthy. The one thing I will say is that, it's just good that it's not the end of the season. It's the beginning. So hopefully this will be the last one. We can just move on in about 4 to 6 weeks and be able to get him back, back in the rotation. But it's definitely a major concern. He has to be concerned. We are concerned as Mets fans. So it's definitely something. And to hear that Max Scherzer also has some hamstring tightness too is not exactly exciting either. So he seems to be all right, but that's not something that you want to go into the season having. So that's the key there. You guys already talked about that trade. I totally agree with Chris. Kimbrel hasn't looked that great of recent. So I'm not exactly excited. I know the Dodgers, will use him as a closer, but I'm not excited right now. I mean, I thought A.J. Pollock did a nice job in the role with the Dodgers, but I know they have many other players that can fill the role. And then the last thing I'll say with baseball, real quick, Tom Bryce, is the fact that I had to find out that they're instituting for the 2022 season that damn runner on second base again in extra innings. Why the hell are they doing that? I know that this is going to be the final year of it probably, but why did you even bring it in here in the first place? It failed last year. It's terrible for the game of baseball, and you bring it back for one more season? I don't get how that makes any sense. So ultimately, that is not something I was very happy with, that we once again, if we go to extra innings, we got to see that runner on second base to start in the 10th inning. Just pathetic.
Well, I will say one thing on the Dodgers very quickly, and I'll get to John Gonzalez here. Cody Bellinger, if by some chance the Dodgers cut him, the Brute Force, do we have room for him on the Brew Crew?
The Brew Crew roster is pretty full. And listen, you know what? Again, and I'll talk about my statistics later on in the show as well this past weekend, but if we had some players, I do not want to go down to the minors. All right?
You guys actually have some play. I got to tell you, listen, some teams we were like, we really like window dressing. Like, you guys have like a really stacked team. And one thing I will say when it comes to DeGrom very quickly, and John Gonzalez has a question on that, and I'll get to the guys here in a minute. I think Met fans, in a sense, maybe it's the Mets' luck, maybe it's the Mets' history, but it's always kind of ironic that Scherzer and DeGrom are supposed to be the next great 1-2 combo, almost like a Johnson and a Schilling, and yet here we are. DeGrom could be out for weeks, and Scherzer, who knows? It was supposed to be a surefire thing this year. DeGrom's going to win 20 games finally. Scherzer's going to win 20 games finally, and yet here we are, and I'm sure Rob Maraska will vent on it, to say the least here, and that does very quickly lead me to, of course, Mr. John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group, which, of course, again, everybody needs to go to on Facebook if you haven't already. And he says, who will replace DeGrom? Will he make a trade? I know Justin and Chris had also addressed this, but anything else anybody else wants to throw out there when it comes to Mr. Gonzalez's question?
Let me make a quick comment to answer his question directly. Who will replace DeGrom? Answer:
Nobody.
No one. Exactly. That's the right answer. Nobody's going to replace this man. Okay. There's no one in the majors that can replace this man. There's no one who's as good as this man. So no one is replacing him. Will they make a trade? Potentially. To Justin Gianelli's point, they might have to get back on the phone with the Athletics to potentially get a pitcher. But the one thing I said from day one, John Gonzalez, and you heard me, was that the one thing that the Mets have done is create some starting pitching depth. So for these 4 to 6 weeks, we hope that maybe we can get some good production from McGill and Peterson and Williams potentially to get some starts. I know they're not Jacob deGrom, but they're guys who have looked pretty good in spring training and deserve a shot for 4 to 6 weeks, hopefully.
Well, we'll certainly see. Again, obviously, very, very interesting times here for the Mets, and Also, very quickly, I'm reading off some of the stuff here in the Sportswire radio group, and it says, according to Sweeney Murdy here from, obviously, the New York covers the Yankees for WFAN, it says, major breakthrough for baseball fans starting next week. MLB umpires will now use a microphone to announce replay review decisions to the crowd. NFL style, this is a welcome change and will help fans better understand the outcomes. For those who are watching and listening to this, how significant is this? I'll go with Justin first.
This is huge. This is just
Tell me why.
Huge.
Tell me why.
Because, so many times in the past, we're stuck in like this pause for like 10 minutes because they're reviewing, whether it's a safer out call, whether it's, a catch or no catch in the outfield, whatever, or fair or foul on a home run. And, sometimes, we know what the result is because they give us the sign safe out, whatever. But one thing we've never gotten is an explanation as to what they're seeing. We're only making our own judgments based on our own eyes, based on the replay given to us from the TV feeds and what's played on SNY, yes, ESPN, whatever. So to finally hear from the umpires, to kind of get a sense of what they're looking at in the replay room in Secaucus is huge. And I think it'll give us a better understanding as to why a certain call went a certain way.
Okay, that's a very, very, very valid point. And again, I've always thought one of the toughest things to do is umpiring. I mean, for you, the Brute Force, how significant is this a big deal at all? I mean, for those who are watching and hearing this for the first time.
Yeah, I'm going to severely disagree with Justin Gianelli and say this is not significant at all. All right, they're going to announce, what happened. Well, let me get this straight, because the MLB decided to start with this. Are they still having those 1950s phone booth things to come out and they got to listen for 10 minutes?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
We still have to wait for you. We still got to wait 10 minutes for you to get the damn phone booth out with the two phones in the 1950s to get the call in 10 minutes. Okay, so that's the first thing that needs to be addressed, and of course it's not. Then you got the phones in the bullpens that are from the 1950s as well. Can we change that? Maybe we can have better communication between the bullpen, all right, and the pitch and the dugout. I mean, how about those things first? I mean, we're addressing this instead. Please. I mean, listen, I like the fact, and I've always liked that the NBA and the NFL now are able to communicate with their fans about calls, but let's pick the calls.
Major League Baseball and Major League Baseball and the NHL, it's almost like it takes forever. Have you ever been at a hockey game and a call is being decided? It takes like forever, and people are like, "Yeah, it's going to be overturned." Then other people are like, "Oh."
But at least in the NHL, the linesman, the referee, goes right out to center ice and explains the call.
Right.
True, but there's like a long.
We don't get a damn explanation.
Yeah, there's a long wait, but I think to the Brute Force's point, I mean, Major League Baseball. I mean, I don't know if it's just a way of doing things. It's just really being the traditional way. I mean, but Chris, how do you follow that up when it comes to this new development here?
I have to say, I agree 100% with what Justin said. 100%. I'm all for it. I love it. I think it's huge. So this way, yeah, they'll come out and explain it. But I do agree somewhat what Brute Force is saying. Yeah, we don't need this big box with the headphones and all that. Like all they have to do is have a little cell phone on them and just call in. Okay. All right.
How about the beepers? Do they still make beepers? Have them a beeper. Page them in. Hey,
right,
change the call.
Out there. Like it's not that hard. I don't know why they're making it out work. They have this big thing. At least give them a screen to look at, like the NFL refs have, right? At least they're looking at something and they're talking with each other and they're, but they bring this big thing out with the headphones and it's nothing. It's just headphones. So I agree. It's like it looks.
It's just so embarrassing. Right? It's so embarrassing.
At a Blue Crew game, when we have a questionable call, what do umpires do? We had a Brew Crew game.
Well, the thing is that with questionable calls in the Brew Crew game, there's no video review or
Yeah, is
surveillance.
it like, remember when you were kids playing basketball and there was jail rules, quote unquote, when there was no referee? Is it almost like that with jail rules?
Basically, I mean, you listen. You don't want to get thrown out of the park. Basically, if you're arguing with umpire, and these umpires for Brew Crew games don't exactly take a lot of stuff, and they're already put in a hard situation, Tom, because in Brew Crew games, there's only one umpire, and it's the umpire behind the plate, and there's no one else. So they got to run around. And make calls. You got to give them some slack. But
I know they're somewhere in the middle of Long Island at like 9:30 in the morning on Sunday or at 11 o'clock. I'm sure that the last place they want to be is dealing with you, angry, and dealing with Googs, and dealing with the Supran brothers. And also want to give a huge shout out to, of course, Steve Saperstein, co-founder of the Shorefront Coalition, and always big listener of ours, and he says the Brew Force is on fire. Yeah, I still want to see Steve Saperstein and the Brew Force on the basketball court one of these days, because Steve and the Brew Force are about the same size, and something tells me that would be a pretty fun matchup. But that's
the
up to
Knicks,
Steve.
we don't got to play each other. The Knicks should sign both of us right now. At this point, the Knicks should just sign us. We'll probably be better than what I saw a couple of days ago.
Yeah, but to be fair, Justin did make a good point, and we spoke about this on Instagram. The Knicks were playing well before Wednesday's game. I mean, I know you don't want to hear it. We'll get to it later. I mean, but to be fair, they were playing a lot better. It's almost like the Islanders right now. The Islanders are red hot right now, and it's too little, too late.
Oh,
That was kind of the Knicks kind of thing there, and John Gonzalez agrees with Chris also on some of his points. So all fair points there. I want to get to an NFL story very quickly that happened. I think it was yesterday, and obviously thanks to Justin for posting this in our Sportswire radio group. And he had said former Seahawks Pro Bowl linebacker Bobby Wagner is signing a 5-year, $50 million deal worth up to $65 million with the Los Angeles Rams per league sources. Wagner is staying in the NFC West, and I'll tell you one thing, the Seattle Seahawks are definitely rebuilding. That's what that tells me. But Justin, set the tables for us when it comes to a little NFL, almost, I guess it's an NFL hot stove. What do you call it these days? I mean, NFL off seasons,
NFL's just year round, honestly.
NFL year round talk.
There's always news every single day. Look,
talk about this one for us.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a huge upgrade to the Ram defense, a defense that lost Von Miller to the Buffalo Bills on a 6-year contract. The Rams are just in this position to continue reloading and, make another run at the Super Bowl. I mean, we got a couple days ago the news that Matthew Stafford got a 4-year, $160 million deal. So we know Matthew Stafford's in it for the long haul, and the Rams are in this window. Young head coach, you got the quarterback who is on top of his game right now, and they see an opportunity, especially in an NFC where it's not all that great. Green Bay's lost its two best receivers, Adams and Valdez-Scantling. So other than Rodgers, they're thin, a little thinner. Tampa Bay, they're reloading for a run with Tom Brady back in the fold over the last couple of weeks. But other than that, I mean, can't really say anything about anybody in the NFC East being of a threat. The other three teams in the NFC North are really nothing to speak of. The Vikings might be okay, but again, okay at best.
Yeah.
The San Francisco 49ers, they're going to be pretty good because their defense will be pretty good. But what are they going to end up doing at the quarterback situation? There's too many questions with Arizona right now. So it really still is the Rams conference to lose. And they get that benefit of the doubt being the defending Super Bowl champion. And again, the Packers and the Bucs are really the only two teams that can come close to competing with the Rams at this point. So I mean, this was huge to get a guy like Bobby Wagner in the fold, and they're going to continue to put out a good product on defense.
And John Gonzalez chimes in here. John, we're going to get to that. That was my next one. I mean, John, are you like reading the monologue here we have on Sportswire already? I promise you I'll get to that. I'll definitely get to that. Because I do have a thought. I mean, listen, maybe he knows the liner notes. Who knows?
He's Adam Schefter.
What did you give him the
True,
the script for the show?
Me. I mean, listen, that's I think Brad and I, we used to have a script when we used to do it, the podcast version of the Sports Report. I think we used to have a script. We'd go through the topics and we'd make sure we'd pregame it and war game it out. But that's for another time. I mean, obviously here Rams do make a move. I mean, Chris, John Gonzalez doesn't think that Mr. Wagner is Von Miller. But what do you think about this move?
No, you know what? It's a totally different position. They're different players. Obviously, Wagner's a middle linebacker. And the thing is, Wagner is going to be 32 this coming season. So to sign him to a 5-year deal, it's going to be interesting how they make the contract up, because I don't think they're going to have him for those full 5 years. I can't see a guy 35, 36 years old as a middle linebacker. You just don't see that anymore, you know? So, but listen, for the next year or two, even 3 years, you're still getting one of the best middle linebackers in the league. So it just makes that defense that much better. Yeah, you know what? They lost Robert Woods. They didn't re-sign Beckham yet, so we'll see. But the Rams are loading up to win another Super Bowl. It's as simple as that. And like Justin said, the NFC is, there's like 2 or 3 teams in that conference right now that you could see going to the Super Bowl. The rest are just kind of, maybe decent.
Middle of the pack, middling.
Yeah. You got the Rams, you got the 49ers, the Packers, Aaron Rodgers wears all of his weapons, right? Like Justin said. The Bucks, you got Tom Brady a year older. Eventually, we're going to see the 1 year where he's going to break down. I mean, he has to, right? I mean, he's 46 now. I mean, there's got to be a year where he starts to show a little bit of his age, just a little bit. But I don't know. Listen, the Rams got the inside track. They're built for another Super Bowl run. So I thought it was a great move. I don't know how they're doing it, but
well, let's not forget they just signed Allen Robinson recently too.
Right.
So that's why the Robert Woods trade made sense.
Right. It just it's mind-boggling how they're able to do this. But I was making a joke. I'm assuming one day they're gonna start teaching this in college, how to get around the salary cap, or just so somebody understands it, because
that would be, I guess, would that be economics class? I guess it would be accounting or economics.
Sports management, economics.
Yeah. Something. I mean, I took economics in college, and certainly that wasn't on the agenda. Yeah, no, we didn't have that. I had a hard enough term learning all the micro terms and such, and John Gonzalez, of course, is going to go into the brute force here and says, well, of course, we forgot about the Lions, right? Because I see the Lions making a big splash. Because what I was going to say is that there's 4 teams in the NFC that I guess you could say are almost elite-like, right? You have the Rams, you have the Packers, you have the Bucks, I guess, and then you'd have the 49ers. There's 4 teams that you think would be surefire playoff teams. And then everybody else, meh. But right. John Gonzalez makes a great point to Brute Force. I forgot about the Lions, because the Lions are the real favorites. Of course, the Lions are the true favorites here in the NFC. And certainly they knew something that we all knew about Bobby Wagner going to the Rams here. Brad, any thoughts here? You want to respond to the Lions comment there, Mr. Force?
Well, I know I have to respond to this Lions comment, because first of all, as we've said on the show multiple times already, if you don't already follow the Sports Authorities group on Facebook that John Gonzalez runs, you need to. It's great. And one of the things that John Gonzalez, of course, had to post was the fact that he's sending me a Jared Goff Lions poster. And we'll see if it actually makes
it. Did he mail you a poster by any chance of Jared Goff?
He says he's going to. Let's see what happens. I like to see if it shows up. But
he might have a Jared Goff autographed jersey for you, for all we know. That could really be the real.
Listen, at this point, John Gonzalez, I'm going to be honest with you now. All this hype you got with the Lions, and you're trying to get me hyped about the Lions. I got that date. I think the Lions play the Jets this year. I'm definitely circling it on my calendar. I might have to show up to that game. So just keep an eye on that.
Do you remember late in the year when the Jets used to be bad? Chris will get this, and maybe Justin, when you'd have the brown paper bags over your head. Let's hope that game's not going to be one of those.
Let's hope not. Maybe it'll be the first game of the season. It'll be really exciting. So we'll see what happens with the schedule. Right. But ultimately, John Gonzalez, listen, you say you're 2 steps ahead. All right, let's take 2 steps back for a second, okay? Because, listen, obviously, all right, Bobby Wagner is not Von Miller. Okay, I know that Von Miller is a better player, but listen, he got a nice contract with the Buffalo Bills, and good for him. If you're a Rams fan, he won a Super Bowl for you, and he took a big contract into the AFC, so good for him. And listen, I think that Bobby Wagner is a nice player for them. And I'm going to make this very clear right now, okay? There's only two teams that I'm excited about in the NFC, and it's really the Rams and the Buccaneers. I mean, there's no one else that really excites me. Nobody here, because I know someone's going to say it to me. Don't nobody come out to me about the damn Cowboys, okay? Don't even talk. We all know what happens. Don't even talk to me. If Washington Commanders people have tried to reach out to me. Don't you talk to me about Commander Carson, all right? Please, leave me alone, all right? But ultimately, it's two teams, all right? Don't give me no Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay right now. They got a running game. They got Aaron Rodgers, but they have no receivers. And until they prove to me that they're going to get one or two, I'm not excited about them either. Okay, and ultimately, we talked about the rest of the teams. And that's what, honestly, if John Gonzalez wants to put it out there, if he wants to make a little bit of a statement here, why don't you go on the record, John Gonzalez, say the Lions are going to make the playoffs this year? Because maybe they will. Maybe they will. So ultimately,
hey, listen, the Bengals went to the Super Bowl and arguably could have won it. I mean,
exactly. So maybe John Gonzalez, if you're on something about the Lions, let's see. So ultimately, I think this is a good move for the Rams. I think it just further solidifies. You guys talked about Allen Robinson as well, who last year for my father was his most hated fantasy football player because he did nothing in Chicago. But I guess now, okay, he'll do better with the Rams because he has a great quarterback in Matthew Stafford. He has a great team, and I'm excited to see. And I think, right now, there's no reason for me to think of any other teams except for the Rams and the Buccaneers to represent the NFC in that championship game.
You still don't count the 49ers at all, considering their defense and them going into having the run they did in the NFC Championship game?
I'll put them in the picture, but, Justin made it clear, and I think he was 100% right. We got to find out what happens at the quarterback position. Right now, it looks like it's going to be Jimmy G. I mean, they haven't really talked about any trade partner, anything happening.
Well, to be fair, why should they? I mean, he's got a Super Bowl in his resume, an NFC Championship game appearance. I mean,
also like the NFL quarterbacks thing is like a game of musical chairs, and it feels like the quarterback needy teams have already fulfilled their need one way or the other.
No, because
how many more potential destinations would there be for Jimmy Garoppolo? Look at why it's taken so long for Baker Mayfield to get traded. He's probably going to have to get released at this point.
Well, that's more of a money thing, I think, with Baker.
Right.
Well, because it's his fifth year and he's under the fifth-year option. But Jimmy G's already gotten the large contract. Not that it was like groundbreaking contract. But he got a handsome payday, and so he carries a big cap number himself. I'm not even going to comment on that.
Are you trying to make us laugh? Are you trying to make us laugh?
Yeah, I have a lot of laughs. I mean, he's doing a great. He's doing a great job. I mean,
oh, come on, Johnny's
like you said. You know what, Justin? You said it right. There's no more, like, the chairs have been full. There's really no where are you going to send him to Seattle? So San Fran is not sending him.
They will not send him within the division,
no. Right? So that's not happening. So there's really no spot. And then with Baker, it's more of a money thing.
Tennessee for a guy. Send him to Tennessee.
No, because Ryan Tannehill's dead cap is so large. Yeah, I don't like it. It's worse than Matt Ryan's. And Matt Ryan's dead cap with the Falcons was like 40-something million, which is like the largest in NFL history.
And is Jimmy G and Baker much of an improvement over Ryan Tannehill?
No.
Yeah. So to me, they're kind of in the same mold.
But to be fair, I mean, Jimmy G does have the playoff resume. I agree with you that statistically, him and Tannehill are probably maybe comparable. Maybe Tannehill's got even better numbers, actually, statistically. But Jimmy G,
is
won in the postseason. I mean, he has won.
Yeah, he's Baker actually won his playoff game too, right? He's 1-1.
Yeah.
So you got to give him a little bit of credit. I think Baker's going to have to either, like Justin said, get cut, land somewhere as a backup somewhere, lay low this year, and do what Trubisky did. Maybe next offseason he'll hook up with, get a 2-year or 3-year contract from somebody because he's got it. He should get a starting job next year. this year, like you said, there's really I can't think of a spot where maybe Seattle for Baker, but
Yeah, I
I'm
think
also I'm
Seattle
also
would be
wondering
feasible.
if the Browns are holding on to Mayfield, bracing for the suspension of Deshaun Watson.
that too.
If he's suspended for the whole year,
Yeah.
they purposely structured his cap number to where his base salary is only $1 million for 2022, and the other 45 million was into like a signing bonus. So he gets that up front, and the NFL can't come take that. They could just take his $1 million base salary. That's his cap hit for 2022.
Wow.
And they could be like, all right, if Deshaun Watson, let's say he gets suspended for the whole season, because who knows at this point what the suspension is going to be.
Possible, you're right.
The Cleveland Browns and Kevin Stefanski could be like, all right, try with Baker Mayfield. And guess what? And Baker, this is your chance. This is your one shining moment. This is your chance to land a big contract elsewhere.
Yeah, it's like an audition.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
It could definitely be a prove it moment here, and I'll get to the Anthony Finkel plug here, of course, for our weekly spot. But I do want to talk about the news that John Gonzalez did mention about, I guess, 10 or so minutes ago before Rob Maraska's here in about 20 minutes or so. Is that I don't know if it's surprising news, but it's definitely a development that was definitely a big story earlier this week, and that is Bruce Arians is no longer the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach. It is certainly an old friend, I guess you might say, somebody we know very well here, and that is Todd Bowles is now taking his place, and Mr. Arians goes to the front office. And I want to go straight to the jugular here. I want to go to the brute force Brad Rice, because something tells me he's going to have a really, really interesting thought or two on this here when it comes to, I guess, our old friend Todd Bowles becoming the head coach now of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, well, you might be expecting me, Todd, to have some interesting comments here, but I'm actually happy for Todd Bowles. To be quite honest with you, I think personally, with his time with the New York Jets, he kind of got a bad rap and really never got a fair chance with the Jets. I really do think that he deserves a starting coach, head coaching job. And I think that, it's nice to see for him, in his case, that he's going to have this opportunity with Tom Brady and a really good team. Obviously, it's unfortunate that Bruce Arians is not coaching anymore, but he's decided to move on. He's going to be in the front office now. So listen, Todd Bowles was on that coaching staff for a few years now. He's been a very good defensive coordinator for many years. I still think his defensive mind is good, and I think he's learned from maybe a Bruce Arians on how to maybe run a better offense. But you need tools to run an offense. And when he was the Jets head coach, he didn't exactly have much to work with. So, again, I don't really fault him as much. I know he didn't look good for it, but it wasn't really a Jets roster that he could do much with. So, ultimately, now the fact that he has a good roster, he has a good defense still, that now they're very familiar with his system, I think that it's a good fit. And I think ultimately it also helps the NFL in regards to, obviously, we talk about, more black head coaches in the NFL. I think that's a good thing as well. And this is a guy who should be represented. And this is a guy who deserves a chance. So I think it's all around a good thing. It's obviously unfortunate. I think everyone was expecting Bruce Arians to coach at least another year, because Tom Brady was coming back. But he made a decision. I think Todd Bowles is a very, a good candidate and a guy who deserves it.
I think the one defense that Bowles had is that I think Sal Licata said this maybe about a month or so ago on The Fan, and he made a great point, and maybe Justin even mentioned this also on one of our shows, in that the first year we're 10-5 going into the last week, so he did a great job with that. Obviously, things didn't work out in Buffalo. Second year was pretty much, it was what it was, and the third year he was really got a raw deal there, and it was kind of we thought Bowles maybe should have got another year there. I mean, so in one sense, if you look at it, he did win 10 games with a Jets team that I don't know if anybody thought that they would have been in the spot they were in. So maybe he should have got another shot. And obviously, look, he's a respected football man, so it's not the worst thing in the world here. And Anthony J. Finkel here says, think Bowles learned how to have a personality. And John Gonzalez had said, Bowles is a great coordinator, but an awful head coach. Well, we're going to see here, Chris. I mean, what do you make of this whole situation with our old friend, familiar face, Todd Bowles, now the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
It was definitely interesting. I think Brute Force hit it right. I think he definitely deserved another shot. He's a good man. He's a good coach. Can't really go by his 3 years with the Jets because he really didn't have much to work with there.
I know. Who was the quarterbacks
Who's
he
he
had?
4
I mean,
years?
Yeah, that wasn't so good. So, but you know what? It is interesting because there was a lot of talk about him and Brady not getting along. Arians and
I
Brady
know. I
not
think
getting
I
along.
mentioned that, and I thought maybe would that have anything to do with this?
I've been going back and forth on it all week. I've been thinking about it a lot. It kind of looks that way because if you look at it, if he steps away from the coaching job and Bowles takes over, now Brady's basically got the offense to himself, right? I mean,
Yep.
he's basically the offensive coordinator, right? With Leftwich.
Yep.
But if they made Leftwich the head coach, then Brady might kind of knock heads with him a little bit. So it made sense. Like now Bowles is the head coach. Bowles ain't going anywhere near the offensive room.
No,
You know what I mean? He's
definitely
not
not.
touching
He never did with the Jets.
Right. So Brady's going to be Brady's going to be in charge of the offense. So I don't know. You know what? I think Arians and Brady, they're both alpha males, right? They're both like, listen,
Yep.
I do it this way and that's it. Brady, I've won 7 Super Bowls. Arians is like, yeah, I won 2. I'm whatever. So I kind of buy that maybe they were butting heads, but still, I think even if they were, I think they would figure it out. Brady's got, he's got 1 more year left on his contract. He could have been like, all right, listen, let's just do it 1 more year together, see if we can win a Super Bowl. But, maybe Arians said, listen, I'll step aside, let Bowles take over, and maybe he could get, some recognition from this and maybe get a job offer after this. It'll help him out too. And Arians knew, what am I going to, he was probably only going to stay 1 more year too, right? With Brady. I think once Brady retired, I think Arians would have gone too. So, that's the way I kind of look at it.
Very, very interesting machinations there, and I guess a follow-up almost before I get to Justin, and maybe anybody else can jump in. I mean, did you find it interesting that Bruce Arians is now in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Ring of Honor? I mean, I guess for 3 years being a head coach, I guess that warrants you being in the Ring of Honor for a team. I mean, usually you get like 5 years at least, or 6 years to be
all right.
True, but it almost reminds me of when Wade Box went into the Hall of Fame as a Tampa Bay then Devil Ray. But hey, who's counting here? I mean, Justin, give me your thoughts on this development here with a familiar face and Todd Bowles, now the new head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I'm happy for Todd. I think he did deserve a second chance, and he's going to be given a very good roster, and obviously. We talk about them up there with the Rams, one of the teams to beat the NFC. And, it gives a chance for us to really get a good sense of Todd Bowles as a head coach. Because like you said, the first year, with Ryan Fitzpatrick,
it was a good year. It was a
good year. And obviously they fell short in that last game in Buffalo when it was win and get to the playoffs. Year two was mired with the controversy of whether or not Ryan Fitzpatrick would come back, whether what the contract was going to look like, and so that didn't really work out too well. And then year 3 was kind of like a nothing year with Josh McCown, and then in 2018, they signed, that's when they drafted Sam Darnold, and they really had no talent on the roster, and it almost felt like Todd Bowles got a bit of a raw deal.
It was almost, that was supposed to be the free year he was supposed to get in
2018.
Right.
But Mike McCagnon said after 4 years that you're fired. They both should have been fired. I mean, why McCagnon was let. We all know why, how bad it was that he got to run the 2019 draft, and then they fired him, and then Douglas took over. But for Todd, I'm very happy. I think this will be good for him. I think he'll do a very good job. And look, we're gonna find out. And I'm pretty sure that we're gonna find out some form of rift between Bruce Arians and Tom Brady. And Bruce can deny it all he wants, like he did yesterday. But yeah, you could just look at those two and tell like they're not taking what from each other.
Yin and yang. It's definitely an interesting relationship, to
Yep.
say the least. And I will say one thing that Anthony J. Finkel is definitely right. And of course, before I get to his plug, and then I want to get an Islander thought in here very quickly, is that I do hope that Tampa Bay Buccaneers post-game press conferences will be a little bit more interesting than some of the Todd Bowles ones. I mean, I will say I do agree with Anthony Finkel.
Yeah, those
on
are pretty
that.
bad.
They were, they were definitely not one of my more memorable press conferences to watch. But speaking of Anthony J. Finkel, and of course, all the great things that he does with DPH Property Maintenance Service, and of course, if you have issues with those garbage cans or the hassle of sorting out recyclables, you need the professionals to help you out over at DPH Property Maintenance Services Trash Genie. And whether you're a landlord, a busy professional, parent, senior, you name it, we handle your trash, keep your curbside clean, and save you time and energy. And especially now that we think that the warmer weather is coming and everybody's getting busy and yard sales and maybe selling the house or whatever it might be, you definitely need DPH Property Maintenance Services Trash Genie. And of course, weekly service plan started, guess right, $40. That's $40. I mean, that's basically almost dinner these days. And you can call DPH Property Maintenance Service at 347-228-2625 or sign up at dph.nyc. And of course, you can use that promo code Sportswire and get your first week free. So again, listen, I mean, if you're anybody, you need any type of help and some cleaning and maintenance, you know who to go to. DPH Property Maintenance Service with, of course, Anthony Finkel. And Big Finkel has been a big supporter of ours for many, many years, and we want to make sure that we support those who support us. And, of course, John Gonzalez has a comment here and says, I know the brute force misses former Jets GM John Idzik. I mean, I had forgot about John Idzik until you just brought him up, John Gonzalez. I mean, I was really trying to forget. I was trying to forget John Idzik. Yeah. That's almost like when the Mets had Art Howe as manager. I mean, that's kind of the John Idzik years, to say the least. So I do want to make sure, though, we certainly support Anthony Finkel. I also do want to mention that we will have a special WrestleMania 38 live show with Sportswire Radio. We'll be on starting at 11 o'clock tomorrow. We'll be on at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We'll have the Rewind Wrestling Network team with myself, and that'll be Ted and Ref Amy and the very lovely, always lovely, Ivy and Tyler Peters and much, much more from their team. I want to acknowledge them. They'll be with us at 11 o'clock from 11 to 12, and then we will have from 12 to 1 the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, guys. That is Chris Belcher and Andy York, and I'm sure Mr. Belcher, a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan, will be joining us at some point. Billy Belcher, you can catch all that action at sportnarium.com/player starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So I'm looking forward to talking some wrestling. Haven't got a chance to speak with some wrestling talk here for a little while, so happy to resume that. We'll also have some more wrestling reviews and news for segments next week on the show, so stay tuned for that on Sportswire Radio. So I do want to acknowledge that. But before I get to Rob Maraska here, I mean, since Billy McInerney's not here, Chris, I mean, the Islanders put a whooping on the Rangers tonight, and I'm always happy to see that. The Islanders have certainly had the Rangers' number over the past, I guess I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years, but Islanders, unfortunately, too little too late, but maybe it's more about the Rangers here right now than it is the Islanders.
Yeah, the Rangers will bounce back. They're obviously going to be in the playoffs, and they definitely got a good shot to make it to the Stanley Cup. Just because, I mean, their goalie is really, I mean,
he's
easily one of the best goalies in the league.
Absolutely.
If not the best goalie in the league. So, but tonight, you know what? We got a couple of by them, and we shut them out 3-0. We got a couple of breaks too. I think they hit 3 posts tonight.
Yeah,
the Rangers
they hit the post a couple times.
Yeah, yep. So that's all right. It's a nice win for us, but like you said, it's a little too late. The first half was really bad this season, but it's nice to get a win against the Rangers, obviously. So we'll definitely take it. And you know what? They're not going to give up. So you know that the Islanders are just going to keep playing hard, and they're not going to look forward to the draft, and start losing some games so they can move up a couple of spots. So they're going to go right to the end. I mean, I think they're 12 back now, or
15 points back.
Yeah, and then they got
2 games in hand. It's 2 games in hand.
Yeah.
It ain't going. It ain't going to work.
It is what it is.
Yeah, so, it is what it is.
And I saw that Matt Barzell recorded his 300th point tonight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
in
He
the
scored
league.
2 points, and
And he
he's
did
3
that
and
in just under a point a game. So it's just
That's
about he's just
pretty
about a
good.
point a game, which
Yeah,
is
it's not bad.
obviously
Pretty good.
no, not too bad at all. And obviously Varlamov continues his hotness against the Rangers because he always plays well against the Rangers. One thing I've
Yeah.
noticed with
I think it's his second
Varlamov,
shutout this year against him.
and I think he had a few last year, I want to say as well. I'm pretty sure that he's had the Rangers number over the past couple of years. So I
He was
definitely,
the second star of the game tonight.
as
Yep.
he should have been. I mean, as he should
Matt
have been.
Barzell first star, Casey Zizekas third.
And listen, you know you're having a day if you're the Islanders when Matt Martin scores. I mean, I love
Yeah,
Matt Martin,
Matt
obviously.
Martin.
Yeah, that's yeah. And if you're the goalie, you're like, all right, this is not my
When
night.
Matt Martin scores, you usually know like you should be winning tonight. I mean,
And it
I
wasn't
love
like a
Matt
And
Martin.
you know what's the funniest thing about that?
Talk to me.
Boomer Esiason was in attendance. He was
Oh,
talking
I'm
all
sure.
day about being at the Rangers game,
Oh, that's
and
great.
now his son-in-law scores a goal.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure at the dinner table, that's going to be a rather odd dinner discussion if they
Yeah.
have one this weekend. So I guess those are.
It wasn't a bad goal either. Like it wasn't
No,
like a
no.
scrum in the front and he squeezed it through. No, it was.
It wasn't well. Remember 2 years ago in the postseason in the bubble, Matt Martin like exploded. He had like I think it was like 7 goals or something like that, or like 8 goals. I mean, he really
Yeah.
was like he was actually really big for us in getting into the
Yep.
Eastern Conference Finals in the NHL bubble. So obviously, updated standings here before we get to Rob Maraska and jump over to baseball. Islanders now are at 71 points, so they have 13 points back, as Chris had, I think, pointed. I had 15, so they're 13 back. 1 game now in hand, so it's essentially we're about the same math.
Yeah.
Rangers are 5 points behind Carolina. They have played 1 more game than the Hurricanes. They are 1 point ahead of Pittsburgh. They have played the same amount of games, and the Capitals are pretty much locked into that 4th spot in the Metropolitan Division, which will be the first wild card, more or less, there. And then we've got in the Eastern Conference, we've got Panthers, 98 points. Lightning, now 6 points behind the Maple Leafs and John Tavares, 1 point behind. And the Bruins, red hot. They're the first wild card. Capitals are the second wild card. And it's pretty much all she wrote there. So those are some of the things to look forward to here. We are on Sportswire Radio having a lot of fun here on April Fool's Day. I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce, and alongside me to speak about all the latest happenings here in the world of professional sports here is Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, which you've heard throughout the week here. Chris Pizzea of the Liftoff Jet Show, which you'll hear tomorrow on Sportswire Radio. And, of course, also of the Talking Rivals Show alongside Mr. Patrick Trotty, who you've heard here many, many times, and the legendary brute force Brad Weiss wearing a Go New York, Go New York, Go New York Knicks jersey, of course, and he is the legendary SJC Long Island Golden Eagles men's basketball player, head coach for our Plainview JFK Hawks boys JV team, also with the LI Brew Crew, Long Island Nets, Level Up Basketball, and much, much more. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce, and if you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, do give us a like anytime on Facebook at Sportswire Radio, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. And also want to give a huge happy birthday to a supporter and somebody that has been on Sportswire Radio a bunch of different times. That is attorney Manny Alacandro. It is Manny Alacandro's birthday. Brooklyn's own Manny Alacandro, who now lives in downtown Manhattan. I want to wish Manny a very, very happy birthday. I also want to wish Sportswire Radio's own Dirty Bird, DB Broadcasting from the Sit Down Marks. It is his birthday today. Of course, the Sit Down Marks were opening before we went on the show tonight here. So want to make sure Dirty Bird has a very, very happy birthday. Always, always love listening to the Sit Down Marks. They are so exciting. Of course, the guys had a show with the Work in Progress guys, which I was on there. So really, really want to make sure we give a happy birthday to Dirty Bird here and all the great things at the Sit Down Marks are doing. And I guess we'll hear from Rob Maraska here in a few minutes. So we'll go back into baseball and warm that up to get his thoughts for about 15 or 20 minutes. And there was a story posted about Michael Conforto having an injured shoulder here. And I want to get to Justin, and I'll get to the guys here because I'm sure Rob Maraska will have a lot to say. And I mean, Michael Conforto, what does this mean now, Justin, that he's got a shoulder injury? And what does this mean for his status for the upcoming 2022 season?
Well, as far as I know, that this injury happened in January, and that he's, all systems go now. But, and I know we were in the middle of the lockout at that point, but yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily know that. I don't know if Scott Boras was using this as like a tactic to say, well, this is why my client's not getting signed. But I mean, I don't know why a January shoulder injury that's clearly healed now, and if he was on a team, Michael Conforto would be in an opening day lineup. He's healthy, but there's just no interest in Michael Conforto. I mean, who at this point is going to sign him? I mean, we're 6 days away from opening day, and he's the last of the top 50. Basically, if you look at every ESPN, MLB Network, he was in the top 50 list of free agents. He's still out there, and obviously, we've talked about it in the past about how he's the last draft. He's the last qualifying offer pick that has a draft pick attached to him. And, he and Michael Conforto would have to sit out until July 16th before the draft pick goes away. So, because the draft is later this year. The draft is in July.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Well,
there,
first of all,
Chuck Gonzalez had a funny comment. We're
first of all, he had to be signed by the Detroit Tigers, but first of all, he had to be signed by the Detroit Tigers because that's their AAA affiliate.
So, can the Long Island Ducks sign him? I mean, technically, the Long Island Ducks could sign him, right?
They could sign him. He'll go bat 210 there. But honestly, I don't know. I mean, and it's not like there are teams emerging as suitors for Michael Conforto. We haven't heard one word out of it.
No, definitely it's an interesting development. We're joined by Rob Maraska here, our longest tenured analyst, some would say here. And obviously, good to be with you, Mr. Maraska. We'll get to some of the guys here in a second. But Michael Conforto, obviously, I'm sure you were listening here for the past few minutes. I mean, give me your thoughts on this situation.
Well, he made a huge mistake, like we said last week. He really did make two huge mistakes. One, not taking the offer before the 2021 season for $100 to $120 million, and then for not taking the qualifying offer. So now it looks like he's just sitting around, and you know what? Teams are not going to want to give up that draft pick, but then again, you never know. There might be a desperate team. There might be some team that's playing really crappy, and maybe they'll give him a 1-year contract and he'll try to prove himself. But I don't know. Right now, like you guys said, there has been no interest in him. So I have no idea what's going to happen to Michael Conforto.
I want to bring the brute force Brad Weiss in here because I always like to get his perspective because he's obviously most recently a former player and he's dealt with some injuries and different things, and he's also had a lot of success out there. So he can maybe talk about it from a different perspective than maybe myself or even anybody else here on the panel. The brute force, obviously, Michael Conforto, if he had this issue, and maybe it's a setback, maybe it's a reason why he signed, I don't know. But from your standpoint as somebody that's a coach currently and most recently played and dealt with some different things, I mean, what's your take on this situation? And if you think it is a real reason as to why maybe Michael Conforto is sitting on the sidelines right now?
Yeah, well, I first want to talk about what Justin said earlier, which, you know what, again, it's not proven to be true or anything, but, the whole shoulder injury thing starting in January, I could personally, as a fan, as an outsider, see that as a potential Scott Boras tactic to try and make teams persuade.
You make it sound like it's a war tactic, like it's Putin and Zelensky and Russia and Ukraine.
Listen, a guy like Scott Boras, we all know, will do whatever it takes to get his client money. So, listen, and that might be what it is because, listen, we all know, and listen, as a player. And listen, I wasn't paid because I played Division III basketball. But ultimately, this guy has to get paid, and he's still asking for too much. And I don't think any team wants to take on a player that's asking for as much as he's asking. And according to multiple sources, I don't think his asking price has gone down very much, even though it has to. So ultimately, Conforto, like Rob Maraska said, and I'm going to use a softball analogy. Okay, in softball, strike one, all right, 2021, all right, strike two, the qualifying offer, and in softball, you're out. Okay, there's no strike three. All right, and ultimately, all right, you're out in 2 strikes, and Michael Conforto right now is out. And to Justin's point once again about the draft pick, I don't think any team right now, feels like they have to give up, a draft pick for Michael Conforto. I mean, there's really no team out there that needs him, and he had teams that were interested in the Marlins and the Diamondbacks. But I could tell you as a player, Michael Conforto, I mean, you really want to go to the Marlins, you really want to go to the Diamondbacks and get paid there, be miserable for many more years. I don't think Michael Conforto wants to do that. I don't think that's the type of player he is. So ultimately, he's put himself into a big hole and a big mess because he should have taken one of those 2 offers that he got from the Mets, and he didn't. So ultimately, he's in this mess. He probably wants to play on a team that wins. And right now, the teams that are contending and the winning teams that believe that they're contending have the players in place already that they think are going to get them to win baseball games. And in the end, just like everybody said, they're going to have to wait until one of these teams has an injury or one of these teams really needs him or needs impact bat maybe mid-season. But I'm going to be honest. I'll say it right here. I don't think Michael Conforto is going to get signed before that deadline. I think he's going to be sitting for a while. I think he's going to be sitting for a while, and it's his own fault. Like I said, softball, 2 strikes, and you're out.
It's almost like that Otis Redding song, "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay." That's what certainly Mr. Conforto's bat is going to be doing, sitting on the dock of the bay here. I mean,
and to piggyback on that real quick is,
Sure.
the one team that I did like a couple weeks ago here potentially mentioned were the Chicago White Sox, and guess what they just did today? Got AJ Pollock.
They're out.
So
right.
If they were looking for a right fielder, well, now they have one, and it's not going to be Conforto. So I mean, his options are severely dwindling at this point.
I hate to say this very quickly, but I think John Gonzalez is right. And it's sad because of where Matt Harvey has gone, but I honestly think that more people are actually interested in Matt Harvey than him.
And I thought I was hearing a potential reunion with the Orioles this year for Harvey.
Yeah, I heard that.
But also, I think he's going to have to face a suspension.
He might.
For the whole Eric K. drug trial. I think he's facing potential 60-day suspension.
Definitely could be. No, and it is sad with Conforto because you know what? Somebody gave him bad advice, and you know what? He basically bet on himself this past year, right? When he turned down that huge offer, and he basically bet on himself. He had a bad year, and now he has the shoulder. Maybe the shoulder issue is real, and teams are backing away from that. So, and now they don't want to give up the draft pick if they sign him. So, if he does get signed, I think it's going to be like Brute Force said. I think it's going to be like in June when that when the deadline goes, and then they could sign him for basically
July this year.
Yeah,
I mean, look, you win some, you lose some. Like you had guys like Kevin Gausman and Marcus Stroman take the qualifying offer last year. They bet on themselves, and guess what? They parlayed it into multi-year contracts, and so it worked out. Now, in Conforto's case, he turned down the qualifying offer. He turned down a potential 9-figure contract from the Mets. The Mets were willing to pay him last year. Steve Cohen obviously has no issue paying anybody. He obviously was willing to go to certain lengths for Michael Conforto. He said no, and here we are again. Yesterday was supposed to be opening day. Michael Conforto still does not have a team.
I think another team that they were talking about too was Cleveland, because Cleveland's got
really good. Chris, I think you and Patrick were talking about the Guardians and their lineup on the Talking Rivals show this past week.
Not great.
Yeah.
Pitching is very good, but their lineup is not good, and they could easily. But I think they're between owners or something like that. They're in the middle of a sale, so maybe. And at this point, do they really want to give up that draft pick just to sign him? he's not going to make that much of an impact where it's like, oh, now maybe we could get into the playoffs. So maybe after June.
I didn't realize they were. I didn't realize they were selling the team.
I didn't either because I just wondered because their payroll was like
Dolan,
30
right?
million. It was. Say that again. I'm sorry.
Who's the owner? Paul Dolan, right?
Dolan.
Another Dolan.
Dolan.
The Cleveland. So you might want to call them the Cleveland penny pinchers. Then.
Yeah, I was gonna say obviously another Dolan is basically the same results too. Unfortunately,
yeah, pretty much.
But their payroll is like $30 million. I think that's a joke.
It's
a
bad.
joke.
It's really bad.
There needs to be a salary cap. We could have I've been saying that for a while, but there needs to be a cap. With a floor and a ceiling.
You've spoke about this on a couple of the Talking Rivals show. I want to bring back Rob Maraska in here, and we spoke about this, but I want to get his thought on it because I know he's going to have a thought on it. Jacob deGrom, I mean, from your vantage point, I'm sure you've heard the news by now. Mr. Maraska, give me your thoughts.
I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked anymore. Here we go again. They're going to shut him down for 4 weeks. Then it's going to take another month to 6 weeks for him to be ready. So, a good portion of the season is going to be gone. We're used to this, we're used to this. I don't know if he's ever going to be 100% healthy again because it's just happening over and over again. Luckily, though, Cohen really did a great job with this team. He has depth, Peterson could step up to the plate for him. And, now the Chris Bassett trade looks very, very good. I mean, that's a major, major thing now. So we knew that deGrom something was going to happen. We just knew it. So I'm not shocked, and we just have to deal with it.
And we'll get to some of that here, but I want to give a shout out, and I want to direct this to the Brute Force Brad Weiss because this is our dear friend, of course, superstar player for our Five Town Sound men's basketball team here, Mr. Damani Merritt. Of course, Damani has been one of our favorites here on Sportswire Radio. We've had him on a couple of different times. He also is involved with the radio station over at Five Towns, and I want to make sure everybody follows the athletics program at 5towns_sound on Instagram, and also please like the Facebook page. This is for you, Brad. I mean, you want to respond to Mr. Damani Merritt here about the Melo jersey and anything you want to say about it? Because Damani is a huge Carmelo Anthony fan.
Well, listen, Damani, I love Carmelo too. That was obviously one great year in 2013. And yes, it is a Carmelo jersey, and it's the last jersey I bought from the New York Knicks because there's no one else worthy of it since he left. So ultimately, I'm wearing it today because I'm just about getting ready for my final address very soon to the New York Knicks into this season. So again, it is a Carmelo jersey. It might be the last jersey I wear in a very long time with these New York Knicks because there's simply no one worthy of it. And I don't even know why. And again, I did it because I went to a game a few days ago. I did go spend money, and I did go to Madison Square Garden. I did give the Knicks money. Okay, but ultimately, the Knicks don't deserve it, and we'll get into that later. But I am still a big Carmelo Anthony fan, and I'm disappointed that his team might not even make the playoffs with the Lakers. So,
the Lakers are in deep doo-doo. I mean, an ironic stat that I couldn't believe this: Dwight Howard 7 for 11 from three this year. But that's certainly an interesting, one of the most bizarre things here. And obviously, Damani agrees with you. No one else worthy at all in the Knicks. Maybe RJ Barrett.
I like RJ. I'll give you that. I like RJ. The fans were very very happy with him. But if the Knicks want to win, they need a player that we could be excited about and want to wear the jersey.
Not Kemba Walker, right?
Yeah, well, John Gonzalez is MVP. Kemba Walker. Give me a break. But in the end, we're paying the big bucks to one man right now who's supposed to be the guy everyone wants to wear, and meanwhile he's being booed. So that's the reason.
It's like another Eddie Curry type. It's another one of these big Antonio McDyess that the Knicks have, and they disappoint.
Wow.
See, I know I'm going back there a little bit, but that's the point here. We got to get Damani on one of these days. I mean, Damani, we got to definitely talk and get you back on. Of course, Damani also has a great Instagram page, Moofy's updates. He has his takes on all the different things. He's got all the things down on football, baseball, basketball. And listen, I got one more thing on Damani, and we'll get to baseball here in a second. But listen, the Brute Force, if you're looking for jerseys to wear, I mean, why not wear Damani's jersey? I mean, he was one of the best players in the Hudson Valley Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, scoring almost 20 points a game this year. I watched a number of his games. I mean, maybe that's the jersey you got to purchase. I mean, in fact, you don't even have to purchase that jersey. I'm pretty sure I can get you one from the head coach of the team, or if Mr. Damani himself. I mean, you could always do that.
I'll wear that proudly. I will wear that proudly. I mean, Damani definitely deserves it. He seems like a great guy, a great player. Like I said, the reason why I will never, ever wear a Julius Randle jersey is just because he's just a selfish player who you don't want to represent. So in the end, Damani seems like the guy I want to represent. He's an All-American. He's a stud. So I ultimately would not only want to wear his jersey, but I also would like to have him on the show. So, of course, Tom.
We'll definitely get him on. Damani's the man. Damani is awesome. He's certainly been one of our big supporters. And again, I want everybody to follow the Five Towns Athletics program here at 5towns_sound here. So those are definitely things here I want to make sure everybody finds out here. But for Mr. Maraska, we'll get some of the guys back in here on baseball. And Damani's got one more comment in here. He says, appreciate you all, fellas, and don't even get me started on Randall. Well, I mean,
don't get me started.
All right, well, then we won't get you started on Randall. If you want to get started on Randall, we'll definitely do that maybe in about, I'd say, 10 or 15 minutes or so. But for you, Mr. Maraska, is there anything you want to ask the guys baseball related before we jump back into other things, namely like the Brute Force's thoughts on Julius Randle? But anything baseball related you'd like to ask the guys here?
Yeah. Do you guys see any trade in the near future for the Mets for a pitcher? I know that players like Johnny Cueto still available. Do you see the Mets making any moves, or do you just think they're gonna sit, see what happens, and then if they have to make a move?
I think that they're going to start the season status quo. I don't think you'll see any trade imminent. Now, could they reassess things around May? The hardest thing about making trades early in the season, is the price tag, because at this point most everybody is still quote unquote in the race, and you're not seeing many teams give up on players that early in the season. With that being said, with the way Oakland has broken it down, I could see them being one team with pieces still to move this close to the season. But I don't know that I see anything imminent. And I think that right now they're going to either go with David Peterson or Tyler McGill as the number 5 right now.
For you, Chris, any thoughts on Rob Maraska's thoughts there on what the Mets? I know we kind of sort of talked about it when John Gonzalez was on here, but any further thoughts you'd like to elaborate on here?
Yeah, I agree with Justin. I think they're going to go with the in-house options right now, and then wait a month, and wait the 4 weeks, see where DeGrom is. If DeGrom is, trending towards, okay, he's getting better, and you know what, maybe we'll get him back in a month and a half, or maybe even like we were saying earlier, maybe the All-Star break. All right, you know what? I think we could get by with what we have. I mean, maybe after a month, the in-house guys are not pitching well and they want to go out and get somebody. Yeah, then they might go and make a trade. And depending on how severe DeGrom is at that time, if he's trending up, then, maybe they'll just get not a minor league guy, but, like a, lower level starter just to give him innings to get them to whenever DeGrom gets back. But I think it's going to be a wait and see approach for now. At least that's what I think. I don't think they're going to panic and, make a big trade or try to make a big trade.
Brad, let me ask you this question, and I'm curious to get your perspective on it because, again, obviously, like Damani, you're a former player. You've done a lot of different things. From the perspective of the clubhouse, do you want it to be where somebody like a David Peterson gets a shot who we've seen here for a couple years in the rotation, had varying levels of success, or do you want them to go and, let's say, like most people on Twitter, get a guy like a Johnny Cueto, who's a big name, has had some massive success, but maybe not over the past few years has had that massive success? I mean, what's your thoughts on that observation?
Well, I'll start with this and say I don't think many Mets fans want to hear about Johnny Cueto, especially our gruesome memory of that World Series. We do not want to remember Johnny Cueto. Okay, so I don't think anyone's interested in that. I think the answer is exactly what you said at the start, Tom. I think that the players and the people in the locker room want to see those guys get the opportunity. I mean, what really did David Peterson or Tyler McGill do to not deserve the opportunity? I mean, Tyler McGill was very good last season. I mean, he pitched some very quality innings. Was a guy that I think we could clearly say we could trust. And I think that's a guy that deserves it. David Peterson, yeah, he was injured, but before the injury, he was a very solid starting pitcher. And on top of that, Tom Bryce, last time I checked, we don't have a left-handed starting pitcher on our roster. So David Peterson could be very important. Especially think about the teams that we're going against. We're going against the Phillies. You got Schwarber, you got Harper, you got
Philly's got a good lineup.
You got a bunch of lefties in that lineup. That's a team that I would throw David Peterson out against, and he's had some success. So, again, I like those two options. I think Trevor Williams did nothing wrong last year, and I think he's a solid guy that you could throw in there. And listen, again, that's why we said the roster and the depth that they built. I think Billy Epler made it very obvious and said it pretty clearly that they believe in what they've got right now. And I think that they're going to believe in it. They're going to stay with it until they feel like they're forced to do something different. And again, I think that's not going to really come until maybe the trading deadline. But I just don't see it. And I said it before with J.D. Davis and Dominic Smith. And when we were talking about them getting traded, I said they weren't going to get traded. And they're not. They believe in what they have. And I think that's the right thing to do as a player. That's what you want to hear. And I think there's no reason why it should change. I think the Mets are in a good situation. Obviously, we lost our best pitcher, but we still have a solid staff to hold the fort down for now until he gets back. So I'm encouraged with the Mets. And again, I don't think they're going to really explore another trade until they have to either force their hand or at the deadline. And the last thing I'll say quickly, and I'll say this very much, John Gonzalez, let me answer that question right now. Hell no. Why are we – Brett Beatty is a stud. All right, we're not trading Brett Beatty for Sean Manaea, okay? Not a chance. I'll answer that question right now. No way. Brett Beatty's staying. Brett Beatty's the future at third base. He is going to be the guy. So the answer is no, okay? But I will say, you got to watch out now. If you're the Mets and, you're a team that, like, we expect to be one of the top teams in the division, I would personally keep my eyes on some of these teams that maybe are going to fall off a little bit. And one team I would say, keep your eye on, we've seen them for many years, they're in the division. How about the Miami Marlins? Let's see how they do this season. Because if they're kind of a team that you're not sure about, maybe they're willing to trade some pieces and they do have some solid starting pitching. I would watch a team like that or some other teams maybe that potentially are a team that maybe might contend in a good division, but maybe not as good as they think, might be able to get a trade later in the year at the trade deadline with a team like that.
Very, very good points. I mean, I think another team would come to mind is the Cleveland Guardians, a.k.a. the Cleveland Penny Pinchers. I mean, that's the name that I think I'm coming up with. And certainly if Ernest Dove had heard Brett Beatty for Sean Manaea, he'd probably his water would break, quote unquote. So, I mean, I'm sure, and for those who don't know, Ernest Dove is a minor league. He covers the minor leagues, and he has a real relationship with a lot of these guys. He covers them, and he gets called, think of like the environmental term tree hugger. He's called a prospect hugger, where a lot of these guys, they're great. We've had many of them come on, but 9 times out of 10, they don't pan out, unfortunately. Right. And one of those guys we had on the show a few days ago on Sportswire Radio, Connor O'Neill, got released again, and he was in the Mets organization, and he's unfortunately, and I'm trying to say this in a very nice way, one of those examples, but that was just a joke there. And we're going to have Ernest on for the Sportswire shows here. And I want to get to this very quickly before I move on and talk other sports. And I want to get Rob Maraska's take, and I'll get the guys' take on it, because this would be interesting for some other people watching and listening to this, and even for Tobacco Road Sports Radio. And I hope this isn't an April Fool's, and I'm reading off something here that really is a true story here. It was in the Sportswire radio group. I don't remember if it was Justin or Chris who posted it, but I'll read it off here, and I'll get Rob Maraska's thoughts, and I'll get the rest of the gang here's thoughts on it then. It'll be Major League Baseball has finalized details for its jersey patch program. Will start in 2023. 4 in by 4 in on either sleeve, no alcohol, betting, or media ads. MLB may sell a corporate logo on helmets beginning with the 2022 postseason. If it's not an April Fool's story, Rob Maraska, give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it's an April Fool's story. You knew this was going to happen. Advertisement everywhere. It's going to look like a soccer uniform. It's going to look like pro racing uniform. And you know what? It's just going to happen like when they put the advertisements behind home plate, when they put them on outfield walls, when they put them everywhere. It's just, that's the future. They want to milk every penny they could get. Am I happy about it? No, because I like classic looks of uniforms. I mean, let's take the Yankees for an instance. Okay. What's their uniform going to look like, with ads on it, I'm definitely, I understand why they're going to do it, but really it's ridiculous for baseball uniform.
Justin, what do you think here? Give me your perspective on this.
I just think it's inevitable. I mean, we've seen it on the side of the NHL helmets.
Yep.
Look
at the NBA. I mean, the NBA was really the first.
Yeah,
one,
I'm watching Lakers Pelicans right now, and you can see it on the shoulder of the uniform. I mean, it's just inevitable. I mean, everywhere you go, everything's just a walking ad at this point. It's really nothing you could do about it, to be honest. That's really all I have on that, honestly.
Chris, I know what Rob made a good point on the Yankee jerseys there. I mean, he's right. I mean, the Yankee jerseys are kind of like iconic. They're kind of like it's death taxes in the look of the Yankee jerseys, and I guess that may not be much longer.
No, it is. I hate it that we're going to see it, but it was a matter of time. Like Justin was saying, it's about money, so it's a matter of time before they do it. It's going to come in the NFL and it'll come in the NHL. It's just a matter of time. I just hope this is the one thing I was thinking. I just hope when you go and buy a jersey, are the ads going to be on the jerseys as well? Hopefully you can get it without, right?
You can always. I know this obviously with jerseys in the NHL, you could always custom make your jerseys. So I guess you could still do that, right?
I hope so. That's the only thing. Otherwise, hey, it is what it is. It's a matter of time. So,
I mean, I don't know that it's all guaranteed, because here's my Kevin Durant jersey, and you don't have the Weeble ad that's on the Nets jerseys. I don't have it on mine, so
okay.
I don't know that the ads on fan bought jerseys. I don't know the consistency of that, and if that's
good. And it's not bad. Then you know what, we could live with it, because you could still, if you want to wear it, you could still buy a jersey without these ads on it. So.
Right.
I guess from that standpoint, from still buying jerseys, that still makes it the way it is, and maybe it makes it more interesting when you're watching a game and you're seeing these different logos and such. I mean, the Brute Force, I would say one thing. I would love to see if at SJC we got some logos on our jerseys, because that means that we'd have more money at the program, maybe to buy things, and then Coach McSloy doesn't have to ask us for the weekly fundraiser events or the charity golf, whatever that we get stuff in the mail for. But that's a side point here. I mean, what do you make of all this, Brad? You like it? You don't like it? Tell us what you think.
Yeah, well, like everybody's saying, and I totally agree, it's inevitable. Every sport's starting to get into that, and it's going to happen. And whether you like it or not. I'm just going to use one of your lines, Tom. You used to say, "Show me the money." That's all they want to hear. They just want to see the money. Okay,
That's all it's about, man. It's all about the money. That's it.
Okay? It's all about the money. So in the end, they're going to do whatever it takes to get more money into the league, and ultimately, baseball is going to do that. So I'm not surprised one bit. It is going to look bad, but we said that with NBA jerseys, and I actually think personally it hasn't been that bad yet. I know it could get worse. But at the same time, it's something that, like we all, say we're going to have to get used to. I mean, I watch WNBA games, and they don't even have like New York on their shirt anymore. They have the logo here and the logo here, and they don't even, you got to know what color they are to be, what team they are. So ultimately, that's what we have to get used to. And again, advertising is important. Everyone's trying, to do it. At baseball games, you can't find a wall without an advertisement anymore. I mean, it's just everywhere. So, and I'll give a shout out to Uncle Steve Cohen, who now at Citi Field, and I'm actually excited to see this when I go to the second game against the Diamondbacks in a couple weeks. But Steve's got 4K TVs going all around. There's going to be more digital screens at Citi Field where there's going to be more advertisements put on those screens. So there'll be more, but in the end, Steve Cohen's upgrading Citi Field, so I'm a happy man.
Those are very, very, very valid points there, to say the least, and certainly we'll look forward to see what happens there. And Mr. Maraska, before we move on here, is there anything else that you'd like to get off your chest here before we get closing thoughts from you and everything else?
Well, I'm going to give myself a plug in a second, but I just wanted to say something that long time Met Ed Coleman, long time, he covers the Mets for WFAN for over 30 years, is retiring. And I think that's a big deal because he's been there from almost the beginning of WFAN.
Yep,
and he was the voice of the pregame shows, and he did some play-by-play too. So Ed Coleman is retiring after 30 years. Want to wish him luck and a happy retirement.
And 75, right? He's 75 at EC, right?
Yeah, he is. So,
is that
he had a good run. Now, nice. I'm going to give myself a plug. I'm going to be a guest on the Sports Loudmouth show on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network next Thursday, opening day at 10 p.m. to discuss the Mets and all of Major League Baseball. So that's next Thursday on the Sports Loudmouth show on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Now, where can we find them on social media? Because I'm trying to remember if that was the station that put a bunch of different people last year on the show. Was that the same?
No, that's not. That's a different.
Okay, because I know it was Googs. I think was the Brute Force on there. Ernest was on there. You were on. There was a guy who had a show, and it was like, I guess I don't know if he's still in existence or not. But I remember last year we had a bunch of people from the station go on there. They were supposed to promote some of the other, at the time, Sportnarium presenters, and that didn't quite work out. So where can we find these individuals on social media?
Okay, they're on YouTube, and they're on Facebook. They're on Twitch, and they're on a couple other places. I have to find out, though.
All right, so you know what we'll do? We'll tag them, and I'm sure they're on Twitter, and we'll post that clip out there, and we'll make sure Thursday, 10 o'clock, everybody is tuned in to listen to you there. And if they want to give us the audio, we'll certainly play that on Sportswire Radio, so we're looking forward to that. And maybe we'll get some of the guys here if they want to come on and maybe talk about their shows and promote what they're doing as well. Anything we can do to get more people out there to listen to us and some of our presenters here on Sportswire Radio, I definitely want to highly encourage that. So I want to give you a plug, Mr. Maraska, some closing thoughts, final soliloquies, anything else in the mind. And obviously always love having you, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, you could reach me on Twitter at @RMaraska and on Facebook at Rob Maraska. Past couple of weeks, my Twitter followers really been going up there, so that's a good thing, and I'll catch you guys next week.
All right, and everybody can follow you at @RMaraska on Twitter as well, so make sure you do that and make those Twitter followers go up, up, and up, and we'll see for Thursday night show, 10 p.m. Again, you can watch that on YouTube, Twitch, and I'm sure we'll get that also onto Twitter and sportnarium.com/player. And looking forward to it, Mr. Maraska. By the time we'll speak with you next week, Major League Baseball will have had opening day, and we'll have a lot to talk about, much more with some actual baseball. And can't wait to do it with you again, my friend, next week. And thank you for all you do for us, and we'll speak with you then.
Thanks, guys.
All right, and that was Rob Maraska here, our longest tenured analyst, and we're talking here all things related here to the world of professional sports. And I want to get a quick thought on the NCAA Final Four here very quickly, because I want to get the Brute Force Brad Weiss and certainly Justin's perspective on it, and obviously what we can look for here, especially with Saturday's games here, since we're going to be on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. So I want to spend a few minutes on that. So Justin, give me a preview on what we can expect on, almost, I guess, in a way, Duke and North Carolina was like in 2000 when we had the Subway Series. We're getting to that, John Gonzalez. John Gonzalez says it's stolen time. We're going to get to that here, but I want to at least preview the NCAA Final Four, because we are on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, and I think it's a big deal. Duke and North Carolina, because the only other thing I can compare this to was the 2000 Subway Series between the Mets and Yankees. And frankly, this might be bigger, because Duke and North Carolina is the whole country is going to get involved in it. Whereas I felt like the Yankees and Mets, it was like, there's New Yorkers. There's always a bias towards New York, right? Whether we like it or not. But Duke and North Carolina, everybody in one of the 50 states is a fan of these two programs. I mean, Justin, you got to talk to me about the Final Four, and especially Duke and North Carolina.
Yeah, and while I have plenty to say about Duke, North Carolina, I think because of that matchup in the Final Four, we're forgetting about how great of a game Villanova versus Kansas is going to be. And I want to, send my well wishes out to Justin Moore, the point guard for the Villanova Wildcats. I mean, that was a tough looking injury. I hate to say, I was out at Buffalo Wild Wings watching the end of that game, and I just knew the minute he got hurt that was an Achilles injury, and that was very, very, it was very tough to watch, and it was very tough for those kids. And Jay Wright, will definitely show the resiliency, and they're gonna have to find ways other than Colin Gillespie to score. I mean, Kansas has been a very balanced team in this tournament, and I kind of figured that, going in, if they become very balanced, they don't rely on one singular player to kind of really carry them. So I think that this game honestly goes either way. But we all know that the main event's Duke, North Carolina, and it's round 3. They met twice in the regular season. They could have met in the ACC final,
tournament.
In the ACC final, but Virginia Tech took them down before taking down Duke and winning the ACC. But
Virginia Tech kind of came out of nowhere in that.
They did come out of nowhere. They had a good second half to their season, and they parlayed that into a good tournament, and they got themselves into the NCAA tournament. But it's going to be really interesting on the matchups of their top scorers, like closing out on 3-pointers so that Brady Manick doesn't go nuts. The boxing out down low between Mark Williams of Duke and Armando Bacot of North Carolina. That's going to be a big battle down low. Obviously Paolo Banchero, who is going to be a lottery pick in the NBA. He's going to be one of the next Duke stars to go out to the NBA. And you got at UNC this well-rounded team.
Hubert Davis coming in back and coaching.
Exactly, a former North Carolina player, and it's weird. He's got the experience as a player. He played under Dean Smith at UNC. He's the lone coach in this who doesn't have a championship. The lone coach who doesn't have this kind of experience. I mean, obviously it's his first year. Roy Williams just retired last year, but I mean, that's all the more impressive because in his first year, he takes this UNC team that missed the tournament last year to the Final Four, going up against Coach K in his final
And
year.
they were an 8 seed, no less. I mean,
They were an 8 seed, and
they had their moments. They struggled throughout,
and
the
they had
season.
they had to go through Baylor, and we thought they might have to go through UCL. They had to go through UCLA.
And they were lucky to beat Baylor because they blew a huge lead.
They blew a huge
25-point lead, I think, in the second half. They
blew a huge lead, and then they pulled away in the second half against UCLA. I mean, they're on a terrific run right now.
And they broke everyone's hearts with St. Peter's. I mean, boy, do you want to talk about villains? I mean, we have WrestleMania 38 this weekend. You want to talk about Roman Reigns being villains? I mean, listen, North Carolina essentially was the villain against St. Peter's. But everybody in America was rooting for Little St. Peter's.
But between Caleb Love, Leaky Black, Brady Manick, RJ Moore, they have plenty of scorers. And so, well, I do think Duke ends up winning this game. Would it surprise me if UNC wins? Absolutely not. They have enough scorers now, and AJ Griffin and Wendell Moore, they're gonna have to be on top of their game for Duke. They really will.
And John Gonzalez, he definitely disagrees. And I want to get the Brute Force Brad Weiss in it because John Gonzalez has had a couple comments here. It says Duke is winning it all 100%. We all know it. It's all rigged and all that stuff. And certainly if it was a Hollywood script, I would definitely agree with John Gonzalez. I mean, I don't know. I mean, listen, what do I know? I'm just a little old host with a station. And the Brute Force, I mean, Duke, North Carolina, again, I'm trying to think of really something equivalent to this. And I don't know. I mean, Maple Leafs, Canadians, I mean, the postseason, but it was only first round. I mean, I could say that. I mean, to me, it's the Subway Series. That's really the only other thing I could really compare this to. And again, the Subway Series was so big here in 2000, but this is like, nationwide. It's almost like a Premier League matchup. So, I mean, for you, the Brute Force, I mean, Duke, North Carolina, set the tables for us.
Yeah, I mean, what a crazy matchup here in the tournament. By the way, for the very first time in the NCAA tournament, these two are meeting.
I couldn't believe that. I tell you the truth, guys. I would have thought they would have matched up at least once or twice. I didn't believe that.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. And listen, let me first get to John Gonzalez because listen, I'm actually going to say I understand where you're coming from, John Gonzalez, with this whole rig stuff.
Everybody in football would say, Brady and the Patriots are going to
win. I mean, listen, it's obviously, scripted really well that UNC and Duke are playing in the Final Four. I mean, it kind of like, oh my God, well, Mike Krzyzewski's final year, he's going to have to get through UNC. And obviously, it makes a great story. But I will say UNC being an 8 seed as well is kind of, looking back at it, is kind of a little disrespectful. But in the end, listen, this is the matchup. It's exciting. It's, as I was watching many shows, they were debating on whether or not UNC and Duke is one of the best rivalries in sports. And I actually tend to agree that I think it is.
Absolutely.
And I think it should be recognized as one of the best rivalries in sports, throughout many of the major sports and college sports. So I agree with that take. But listen, I mean, North Carolina holds the winner when it comes to head-to-head matchups in the history of this matchup. But since Coach K's been there, it's actually Coach K 50, UNC 49. So this is a crazy 100th game between these two in the Krzyzewski era. But ultimately, I mean, how could you say that Duke is not going to win this game? I mean, it just – listen, I know UNC is going to do a great job. They obviously came into Cameron Indoor Stadium and beat them on Mike Krzyzewski's senior night, but I think a lot of that was distracted from Mike Krzyzewski, and I think the team wasn't really ready to play that night. And I do – again, I respect UNC. They're a great team. But I just think that Duke is going to come out with a different different animal, different, motivation here to play for their coach. And they're playing arguably their best basketball of the entire season right now in Duke. And I know UNC is the same, but I just see, Banchero having a big game for Duke. I know that, they're going to have to stop Baycott down low. They're going to have to contain Love. And the last time these two matched up, 4 of the 5 starters for UNC were in double digits. 3 of them had 20+. So this is not going to be an easy task for Duke, but I do think they're going to be ready to play. I am excited for that game. It's going to be close, but I think Mike Krzyzewski and his coaching experience is actually going to take over when it comes to that matchup in coaches. So I'm excited for the matchup, and I'll just quickly say, I know you're going to pivot to it in a second, Tom Bryce, but I'm not exactly on the same page with Justin Gianelli when it comes to Kansas Villanova.
Well, let's hear what Justin Gianelli has to say on that, and then let's get the brute force Brad Weiss's take on the winner and the outcome of that. I mean, why not?
Well, I'll stick, even though my Final Four is busted and my champions UCLA are gone.
I think a lot of people's.
But you know what? I had Kansas reaching the final, so I do think Kansas wins, but I do think the resiliency of Jay Wright and the resiliency of this Villanova bunch, I think they're going to give Kansas a run for their money. And I would be, and again, would I be shocked if Villanova is playing Monday night? I would not.
No, Jay Wright's a great coach.
Do I think they're absolutely. And
he likes Nova over Kansas for the reason.
Of course he does.
No, you know what? I'm gonna take Kansas, even though if you're telling me one game to win, Jay Wright or Bill Self, I'm taking Jay Wright. But I think Kansas's talent level is just a little bit better, and I think you're gonna really see Villanova late in the second half miss Justin Moore. So I do like Kansas.
I think that's what the brute force is really referring to there, and that's ultimately why I do think you make a very, very fair point on why you might like Kansas. And Brad, I do want to touch upon that in terms of Villanova, Kansas. And Coach Gordiesto and I were speaking about this on Instagram a few days ago, actually, about this loss. I mean, you've been a player. You've been in the postseason. I mean, can Villanova overcome this loss and win? I mean, give me your thoughts.
So my first answer to that directly is no. And listen, I know, and I totally agree with a lot of what you said, Justin. I agree with you are saying, Tom. Jay Wright is one of the best coaches that I think lives on this planet right now. I really respect Jay Wright. Obviously, his Villanova days have been amazing. I respect him, obviously, for his job that he did at Hofstra. He's just a great coach that deserves everything that he's gotten. He's a really great coach. But the issue is his roster. And you guys mentioned, Moore's Achilles injury. It actually hurt my Achilles when he hurt his, because just like Justin said, I knew it wasn't good, and I've had an Achilles injury. So I understand how it feels, and I just know that that's never a good sign. So I kind of felt the same way when I saw that injury. But listen, Villanova and Kansas, I just think of the first word I think of is depth. And I just think that Kansas has too much for Villanova. I mean, let's watch Kansas play. Watch how they played in the second half against Miami. I mean, they killed them, and it wasn't even close. And you just see the shooters that they have in the perimeter, the big guys they got down low, the depth they have coming off the bench, the scoring ability they have from everyone in the lineup. They are some team that I think is really special. I love Villanova. They're going to play hard. They're going to be in the game. But I think the final result is not going to be as close as we think. I think it's actually going to play very similar to the Miami game with Kansas. Miami gave them a good fight in the first half. I think it'll be in the second half. It was a totally. And then in the second half, I just think Kansas is going to take over. That depth is going to be too much for Villanova. And Jay Wright can draw up all he wants, and he's amazing at doing so. But unfortunately, he just doesn't have the players that Kansas has. And Bill Self is still a great coach. And I think in the end, it's going to be Kansas and Duke in the final game.
Yeah, and that's exactly, Brad, you hit on everything. And I was saying, like I was saying, Kansas doesn't rely on one single guy for scoring. So for Villanova, you can't specifically game plan for one single scorer. Everybody could score. All 5 starters likely end up in double figures. That's the kind of team that they are. They might be the most balanced team out of the 4 teams left.
Oh, I agree with that. And plus,
because Duke does rely on their star power of Griffin, Boncaro. They, North Carolina relies on, Brady Manick knocking down threes. They rely on, offensive rebounds and putbacks from Armando Bacot. Kansas can rely on everybody.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll quickly say, Tom, is that it's also very underrated, Kansas's defense. I think that we don't talk enough about how they defend. I mean, again, Miami had success in the first half against them the last game. In the second half, Kansas's defense was all over them, turning them over left and right, and making them look foolish. So Kansas has got to be given the respect for their defensive ability as well, and I think they're going to be really well prepared. And like I said, it's just going to be a tough game for Villanova. I know they'll compete. I know they'll play hard. I know Jay Wright will have them prepared, but I just think it's not going to last as long as we think. And in the end, John Gonzalez, let me get to him now, will be wrong. And he needs to listen to me. Like I always tell him, listen first.
This has been going on now for like 4.5 months now. I mean, it's been like 4 months between you and Gonzalez, and you telling Gonzalez first it was the NFL. Now it's college basketball. Now I'm sure it's going to be the NBA. Then maybe it's going to be horse racing next. I don't know what else is next.
I don't know why he's not learning his lesson, though, John Gonzalez. You picked the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Kansas City Chiefs in the first round of the play. I told you not to. I've told you not to over and over, and you just don't listen. And then you did say that you would listen.
I got to be honest, the Chiefs and the Steelers, to pick the Steelers, that was a mulligan. I got to agree, Brad. That was a mulligan.
He's got to listen to me.
Brad, I got a good question for you.
Yeah.
Like, Duke is coming into this game, right, against North Carolina. North Carolina's had their number this year, right? They beat them the last game in Duke, last home game for Coach K. How does the coach prepare the team to play against a team that's basically had their number this year? Like, do you enforce that? Listen, these guys have beat us 2 or 3 times in a row, or do you kind of get that out of their mind and just concentrate on this game coming up?
Yeah, well, obviously you concentrate on the game that's coming up, but again, when it comes to coaching, you obviously use a lot of film. You watch and you see your mistakes. Now, the thing is that Duke early in the season basically murdered UNC very early on, and they have that game in their back pocket. But listen, any team that gets their butt kicked is obviously going to come the next time ready to play and want to beat you, especially when you're in a rivalry at that. Like I said, I thought the game itself and the atmosphere and it being Krzyzewski's last game at Duke, I thought that kind of took over rather than the players staying focused on what the goal was. I think they knew that they were going to be the ACC winner. They were going to be in the tournament. They're going to be the top seed. So right. I think that played a factor in why Duke didn't come to play as much as they should have the last game against UNC. So with that, I think you use that as a coach as motivation for this game. You try to push your players and say, listen, we didn't come out to play. Now let's see what we did right the first time, contrast that with the second time, and then figure it out. And I think there's no one better in the game, both on the collegiate level and obviously when he's coached for Team USA. He's coached, many great players. And not only that, you guys hear multiple players saying Coach Krzyzewski is more than just a coach. He's a mentor, and he's a guy that we love. And I think that's just the type of coach he is. And I think he's going to not only have a great game plan, but he's going to galvanize these troops. And these guys are going to play as hard as they have all season. And you've seen it in this tournament. They're playing at a very high level, like they are pissed off from that loss.
And he looks the same. I'm going to continue to say it. The guy hasn't aged. I mean, seriously. He he's got the same look. I mean, I don't know how this guy does it, to say the least. And I'm going to make one – it's a kind of a funny remark. And I was watching – I think it was the Nets game. It was yesterday's Nets game. And who do I see all time second in three-point percentage? I forgot about this. Hubert Davis. Second all-time in NBA history from three-point percentage, 44%. I didn't realize that Hubert Davis actually made that many threes to be second all-time. I'm sure it's a lot less threes.
He was a first-round pick, wasn't he, by us?
Yeah, 92. He played, I think, I want to say 3.5 years for the Knicks. I want to say 3.5 years, something like that. I mean, and I have actually a new person in here checking in from Georgetown, Guyana, and our national sport is football worldwide, and it's Anesta Glenn here. And Anesta, is there anything you'd like to maybe speak? And I appreciate the fact that you've tuned in here and watched this on Sportswire Radio. Is there anything on your mind that you think is important, whether it's anything else that you might like to ask us that we hopefully could answer? I mean, certainly.
I'll say one thing, Tom Bryce, as someone who's
Have
very
you been to Guyana? Is that what it is?
No, but I'm a guy who has a hobby in travel, and I've seen pictures, and I've heard from people who've been there. Beautiful country, by the way, Georgetown.
Yeah.
Beautiful country, great place. So shout out, of course, to Mrs. Glenn.
Very friendly people over there, and I gotta read this off from John Gonzalez because I don't even know if Rob Morosco's probably from the Stone Ages, but Coach K has been around since Rob Morosco was a toddler.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I got to think about that. What are we talking about? 67, 68? I think Rob Morosco might have been more than a toddler. No, I mean, that's and he looks like more than a toddler. So, and I have another comment from Miss Glenn. In Guyana, we don't have a Michael Jordan, and that makes me sad. Well, a lot of fans here in New York were sad because Michael Jordan played against them, and
right, we didn't have Michael Jordan either.
He didn't do a lot of good things. So if it makes you feel any better, and as a lot of New York fans who listen to us and watch us regularly, really weren't Michael Jordan fans because their hearts were broken so many times.
Yeah,
so,
we were sad too. We didn't have a Michael Jordan.
Might have been sad for different reasons. I mean, but certainly I can
we
remember
had a Patrick Ewing. That's what we had.
That's kind of like the consolation prize, right? It's almost.
Listen, at least you guys got to see that. At least you got to see it. I gotta watch Julius Randle.
But you know what though? Like looking back now, 25 years later, you know what? Looking back 25 years later, it's great. But in the moment, as a little kid, like in 1996, when the Bulls eliminated the Knicks, it really didn't feel so great. So I mean, and John Gonzalez has a funny comment from Miss Glenn. Do you have a brute force in Guyana?
No.
I don't know.
He's a one of a kind, and he's here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Long Island, Plain People Island. I mean, I guess, and Esther might want to hear that. I mean, and Esther, I'm also curious, how did you find us, and where was it posted? I mean, so I always appreciate when we have listeners from different countries and such. I know we have regular listeners all throughout the world on sportnarium.com/players. So I definitely appreciate the fact that you check in. I wish I could really comment on something sports related that you might want to discuss with here, but I don't know what else if you have anything else on the mind. But while we wait for maybe Miss Glenn to throw a comment or two out there, I mean, I do want to get to it because everybody wants to hear it. And while we've got another about 25 or 30 minutes here tonight, I mean, that is, of course, those New York Knicks, and it was the talk of Instagram. It was the talk of social media here. The last, I guess, 48 hours, I even posted a clip or two about it on Instagram. I mean, Bruce. In fact, I got the comment in here. In fact, she heard it from Anthony. Oh, okay. I know who this is then. Okay, I know who this. Okay, Anthony Finkel. I definitely know who this is. Okay, so I'm playing along now. Okay, so certainly, I thank you, and you can tell Miss Glenn. You can tell Mr. Finkel that the check's in the mail for watching and listening to this. So now I can tie 2 and 2 together. So I definitely. Tell him that I owe him. So, I mean, that's all I can say. So I definitely give a shout out. So safe to say that I know why you're watching and listening to us. So that's that kind of makes me then even more lead in to the segment that I know Mr. Anthony Finkel's probably somewhere maybe watching or listening to this. And Miss Glenn is repeating this because Anthony Finkel is a huge New York Knicks fan. And Brute Force, it's that time, and as John Gonzalez says, it's Dolan time. So the Brute Force, the floor is yours when it comes to your much beloved New York Knicks.
Yeah, well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, if you have not gotten a chance to do so already, tune into my Facebook, Bradley Weiss, on Twitter at BradWeiss20, and on Instagram at BWeiss20. I put together a video of some of my best rants and highlights from the New York Knicks. All right, and again,
I was expecting like the old stuff. You went back into the archives from like 2020. I was expecting that more. It took way too much time. It took way too much time.
Well, listen, I just wanted to salute these New York Knicks because listen. Let me just get straight to it right now. Okay, first of all, I am wearing a New York Knicks jersey tonight. Okay, it's kind of an April Fool's joke to all you people out there, all right, that are watching me support the New York Knicks with this jersey. I am fooling you right now because as a Knicks fan, I am just so devastated and so upset that once again we are back to the doldrum days, all right, where we can officially say once again that, like we're used to saying, or I'm used to saying, because, of course, Chris is talking about watching Patrick Ewing. I'm used to hearing the words, "We, the New York Knicks, are eliminated from the playoffs." That's what I'm used to hearing. Okay? And again, once again, I got that message last night. Now, let me first start with this. I was at the Charlotte Hornets against New York Knicks game on Wednesday night, and everybody, some people were like, "Listen, Brad, what the hell are you doing putting money into the New York Knicks? You've talked about it."
Can I just jump in? What did you use? Ticketmaster, StubHub, Vivid Seats?
StubHub.
All right, better than Ticketmaster. Whatever you do not use Ticketmaster.
Ticketmaster, I've had some issues myself.
They're a ripoff. Oh, my God. They're a ripoff.
Yeah, no. So I used StubHub. I actually got a great deal. But I'll tell you why I was there, ladies and gentlemen. And you guys think it was to support the New York Knicks. It was not. Okay, it was not to support the New York Knicks. I went with James DeSimone, my good friend from Clark High School.
James DeSimone.
Right?
Shout out to
James is the man.
He's always liking our stuff on Instagram. Love
James is the man. All right, and he wants a shout out. He says, "Oh, you're giving everybody else a shout out." I give you a shout out, and here it is, James. Okay, so you're a great guy. And I went to the game with you because your favorite idol player is Isaiah Thomas, who's on the Charlotte Hornets.
Yes, I saw that on Instagram.
He wanted to see him for the first time in person. And I said, you know what? We were either going to go to the Nets game or we were going to go to the Knicks game. We couldn't make Sunday against the Nets, so we went to the Knicks game. And ultimately, it was a fun experience. Unfortunately, IT only played 4 minutes and scored 2 points. But ultimately, James was happy to see him. What I was happy to see was New York Knicks fans booing Julius Randle. That's right. That's what I was happy to hear about. Okay, I heard people cursing him out. I heard people yelling at him.
Did you make sure that James's ears were covered when he heard the curses?
I listen. I was the elder statesman, so I had to make sure he was all right. So I was there.
Remember when we had those class trips? You were like the tour guide.
Exactly. So I had to be that guy. I had to lead the charge. But ultimately, I was not the one cursing. I was definitely the one booing. And Julius Randle, ladies and gentlemen, deserves every minute, every second of it. And I don't care what the hell he says. Okay, because he's going on his post-game conference. All right. By the way, he was happy the other night after the Knicks lost, and I'll get to that in a second. Okay, but he goes on his post-game conference and he says, "Oh, well, my kids come to the game and they're booing and they're upset and they have to leave." You know what, Julius Randle? How about you play better? How about you step up? How about you be a good teammate for damn sake? You, Julius Randle, have pissed me off so much because the last time the New York Knicks won a game, did you guys see what this man did? Did you see what he did? They won a game. He scored 5 points. They won the basketball game. He got the rebound. He threw it to the opposite side of the court and walked off the court, did not celebrate with his teammates. Yep. What the hell kind of teammate is that? And as a coach, that is the worst thing you can see is when you win a game, your player, because he didn't get his points.
Could you imagine one of our boys at SJC
jealous
doing that?
because Obi Toppin had a big night.
Yeah, and this is the problem. This is supposed to be your best player. We paid him $117 damn million in the offseason. 4 more damn years I have to suffer and watch this guy, okay? And he can't even freaking celebrate a damn win because he didn't get his points. Oh, but then I go watch him on Wednesday against the Hornets, and they lose the game. All right, he gets 20-plus points.
I was just saying.
And you know what he's doing after the game? He's hugging LaMelo Ball. He's dapping up Miles Bridges, who freaking kicked his butt in the fourth quarter. He showed up in the fourth quarter, and Julius Randle once again came up small. All right, this is what we see in the fourth quarter. I've always said it. He's played better in the first, better in the second, better in the third. When it comes to the fourth that we need him, he is nowhere to be found.
Listen, he's what Dave Winfield was to the Yankees, Mr. May. That's what Julius Randle is.
Pathetic. So in the end, Tom Bryce, listen, how can you support a man? How can you support a man that when we win and he doesn't get what he wants, he decides to walk out? But when we lose, all right, he's the guy supporting and he's the guy smiling and all that because he scored 20-plus points. Give me a damn break. This is not the guy you want representing New York City. This is not the representation that we need as a state, as a community. He is the biggest reason right now why we look so foolish because of him. All right, and it's just disappointing to see from a player that came from an All-NBA player last year, an All-Star, a guy that we respected. He came up short in the playoffs.
Yeah, we spoke about him last year on the show, and it was like, wow, Julius Randle came out of nowhere, and the Knicks were the toast of the town.
But then this is how he responds. And ultimately, it's just a disaster with him. And listen, we could go on about the roster and how they screwed up. Evan Fournier scored 30 points. It was nice to see him score a whole bunch of points when I went to the Hornets game. He couldn't guard nobody. They basically gave whoever he was guarding the ball, shimmy, between the legs, behind the back, right past him, layup. All right, he couldn't guard nobody. The Knicks defense is terrible. And by the way, speaking of that, who's the coach of the team? It's Tom Thibodeau. He's supposed to be a defensive mind. And our defense is absolutely horrifying and atrocious. So in the end, the New York Knicks, ladies and gentlemen, are a disaster. And to John Gonzalez's point, right on cue, at the end of the game, when James DeSimone was trying to get a signature from Isaiah Thomas, guess who walked literally 10 feet away from me, was walking out of Madison Square Garden? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it was James Dolan. And you know how bad I wanted to say something, how bad I wanted to go at him. All right, but in the end, I did not want to be banned from Madison Square Garden for the rest of my life. Okay, because he would have done that in a heartbeat. He would have got me done. I would have been done. Okay? So
on Instagram, Brad Weiss. Oh, that guy who played for SJC Long Island. Oh, they definitely would have made sure. Listen, he would have called Coach McSloy, and he would have called even.
Oh yeah. Please. I mean, he would have called everybody.
I mean, forget about it. You would be all over the news.
Oh, of course. So listen, in the end, Finkel's 100% right. All right, and listen, I would have loved to have said things and went on, but again, ladies and gentlemen, it's just disaster.
Did you guys get popcorn at least at the game?
We got there were actually some really good chicken tenders and fries, and if you guys don't know, by the way,
the chicken tenders were good at the Garden, by the way.
They are, and it's really good at the Garden because I actually love this product, and I wish they had it on Long Island. Big Mott's. So Big Mott's, these mozzarella sticks that are big and they're so good. Every time I have them, they're just so good. So I was very happy with that. I wish they had a location on Long Island, but they're only in arenas and they're also in the city. So in the end, it was a great food experience. It was a great listen. It's
good, but entertainment-wise,
right? In the end, ladies and gentlemen, what do I see every time I go to the Garden? It's another Knicks loss, and I say it over and over. They lose every time there. You can call me the cancer all you want. Okay, in the end, the Knicks deserved it this season. They were pathetic. They were a disgrace. They were awful. They were embarrassing to New York as a state, the United States as a country, as I've said on multiple times. They are embarrassing to basketball as a whole. New York as a city, it is just pathetic to be able to watch this team and see them. And unfortunately, once again, Tom Bryce, we are headed for years of disgusting messes, and we have Julius Randle locked up for years to come, and nobody, I say nobody, is going to want that contract, and I pray that he actually does what he said he's not going to do, and he gives a trade request. So, it's just another year of New York Knicks basketball. I'm upset. I haven't seen this team really ever do well, and it just continues to be the same thing. So, to toast the New York Knicks, I will do this. Okay, I'm going to take this jersey off. All right, I'm going to throw it across the room. All right, and say, New York Knicks, I'm just done. I don't want to talk about this team. And farewell, New York Knicks. The 2021-22 season as a whole was a disappointment. And once again, you got me upset after I was happy at the beginning of the year.
Well, at least you didn't take a match and decide to burn the jersey like some people do.
Oh, I could.
Remember when LeBron left Cleveland the first time and everybody gathered and burned their jerseys? I mean, at least you didn't do that. And my I guess it's funny fire story now is actually my father when he was alive was a big cigarette smoker, and one time he was smoking a cigarette and he left the cigarette lit and he went in the bathroom and didn't realize, he went back to sleep and he almost got us all killed because he almost set the entire house on fire. That could have been like you, the brute force. But thankfully, we have a comment actually from one of my very good supporters and a longtime friend. That is, of course, Mr. Bill Meyer. And, of course, Bill Meyer is the man. He's obviously our beloved post office man from West Brighton, and of course, all those great areas. And he's somebody who's a huge New York Mets fan, and also he's got a thought or two. And he says maybe LeBron wants Julius Randle. I don't know. I mean,
okay, let me make a quick comment on this because actually,
absolutely, because Mr. Mazzia would definitely love to hear this.
So somebody actually brought this up to me, saying that would you be interested if, and again, the Lakers have already had Julius Randle, so I can't imagine they're going to want him back. All right, let's just say, and again, this is just, I don't know what to think of it, but let's just say the Lakers want to trade Julius Randle for Russell Westbrook, and we're in that situation. Honestly, I might say because Russell Westbrook only has 1 year left on his contract, and Julius Randle has 4. All right, and every year, by the way, it goes up from like $23 million to $25 million to $27 million to $29 million this last year. Okay, I don't want to pay that, and he's proven that he just can't be the guy. So Russell Westbrook for a year and another year that the Knicks are probably just going to be a mediocre team. Okay, whatever.
Can I make one point, and I'll get to some of the guys. Just one take on that Julius Randle thought. Wouldn't, in a sense, Julius Randle replace potentially maybe, I don't know, an Anthony Davis?
That's true. But, again, maybe the Lakers decide to trade Anthony Davis to another team beforehand. We don't know what they're going to do. We don't know what's going to happen in L.A., which is going to be one of the more interesting developments as we go through the offseason. But, in the end, listen, I really, and I pray, I'm going to pray for until the next New York Knicks season starts, okay, that they trade Julius Randle, because it's not just about his futility as a player. It's him as a teammate, him as a representation of our city, the city that we love, the Madison Square Garden. He's just a terrible representation. As a teammate, as a player, it's just a guy. And everybody's the one thing I'll say is that everybody's saying, well, he's only 27 years old. Okay, he's only 27 years old, but he's been in the league. He played for the Knicks last season. How can you go from that to this so fast? And ultimately, I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. I don't care if he's 27, all right, or 34. He needs to be better. It's embarrassing, and it's just something that we cannot stand as New Yorkers, is seeing a player like that be our best player and represent the city like he does.
See, before I get to the guys in New York, it's like you said, you hit the nail on the head. It's magnified. Think about it in the past when the Yankees had Gary Sheffield, and he produced, but he had sort of that mixed bag to him. The Mets certainly have had their share of players. Bobby Bonilla, Javier Baez. You can go, it's littered with that, of players in New York. It's magnified when you act a certain way. Maybe you get away with it in Kansas City, maybe you get away with it in Seattle, but in New York, it's a different dynamic. So from that standpoint, I completely agree with you. For the guys in here, how do you follow up this rant by the brute force? Anybody want to try? Anybody want to?
I don't know how you follow up that act. I don't know.
No, thanks.
There's just nothing to say. At this point, there's nothing to say. There's nothing exciting to say. As I said on this show, and I probably, in that clip that I put, that 5-minute clip, I probably said the word depressing about maybe 25 times.
You did say it a lot.
It's a depressing topic. And there's nothing good that can be said about it. So in the end, it's just over. The season's over. It couldn't be better that we just don't have to talk about these New York Knicks because they just don't deserve to be talked about, and they're an absolute disgrace to the NBA, New York City, and many more people who put their heart and soul into this team, and ultimately they just let you down, and they're going to continue to do so until something gets right. And that one thing that gets right, Tom Bryce, as of course our good buddy John Gonzalez will say, is the day that James Dolan is gone, and that day is not inevitable.
So I'm not going to ask you then about Tom Thibodeau coming back. I'm not going to ask you about draft position. I'm not going to ask you about all that things because of what you just said. So I'm going to move a little bit away from that and use the last 15 or so minutes on the show to kind of focus on something everybody can jump in on. That's some opening day predictions and some win totals for the local teams. That way we can bring it back and make everybody feel a little bit better about things. As we are on Sportswire Radio and we are talking all things related to the world of sports. It has been a rather eventful April Fool's Day here on Sportswire Radio. We're with Justin Gianelli, does a great job for us with the Baseball Banter Show. Chris Pizzea of the Liftoff Jet Show, which you will hear this week, and also the Talking Rivals Show, alongside Patrick Triton, and of course, the brute force Brad Weiss. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. All right, so I've pretty much said it here. We'll use the last 15 or so minutes before we get closing thoughts and everything else on Major League Baseball, maybe some predictions, some thoughts, and I'm going to go with Justin first. And Justin, give me your thoughts on maybe win totals for Met Yankees and thoughts on the season and maybe some surprises or things that we should look for now that the season's going to be upon us by the time we speak next Friday.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Mets and Yankees, the Mets are currently according to FanDuel, the Mets are projected at an over-under of 88.5. And given
was this before or after DeGrom's news?
Well, I'm looking at this right now. So
okay,
I'm sure they've factored in Jacob DeGrom's injury, and I don't know truly what to make of this team because it is an older team. It is dealing with a lot of guys coming off of down years, injury-plagued years. There's a lot that could go right for this team, but there's a lot that could go wrong. So, I mean, for the Mets, I think it's truly a mixed bag. You know what? I'm gonna put my bias in front and say I'll go over. I'll say they'll hit 89 at least. Because I do think they have a good lineup. I do think they're going to be able to score runs this year.
Do you think the lineup's really good? Because to me, I feel like, and somebody asked me this, and Bill Maziers jumped in and says, even without DeGrom, the Mets will win 90 games, Diaz permitting. Yeah, that's obviously a big asterisk. You think the lineup? I'm kind of like mixed on the lineup. I got to be honest. I don't think the lineup's that like impressive. It's kind of an asterisk almost.
No, I do think it's a good lineup, and especially if your top four is Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso. I think that's
Nimmo's got to stay healthy though. He never stays healthy.
Yeah,
Nimmo,
of course. And I do expect a bounce back from Jeff McNeil. I mean, we've seen the 3 years prior how good of a hitter he is, so I think he gets back to that. I legitimately think the philosophies of Eric Chavez makes a difference, and I think they kind of because Chili Davis was more of an old school kind of guy, and that's the guy that they kind of liked. And then Hugh Quattlebaum came in, and things went haywire. But again, they didn't hit all last year, and that's why the change was made, and that's why they hired a new hitting coach under Buck Showalter. I mean, Jeremy Hefner is the only holdover from the staffs prior, and the fan in me is going to go with the over, but I think it could go either way. As for the Yankees, here's the number that FanDuel has right now. It's 91.5. So right around where they were last year because they won.
Talking Rivals guys, which we'll get to, Chris, in a second. I think you guys had, and I listened to, it was 90, right? Like you guys were around 90, 92, I think.
Yeah, I said all four of those. The big
would win
four,
90. I think Patrick Patrick thought the Blue Jays were gonna go and win just under 90. So that's kind of in the ballpark, if I recall correctly.
The Blue Jays over under sits currently at 92.5.
So Yankees with 91 was that what you had?
91.5 for the Yankees.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get Chris in a second. I mean, I think that's I think they win 90 if I were to say about 90ish.
Yeah. No shock, but the Dodgers have the high of 98.5.
I might even have them 100.
I think they're going to be the only team in baseball to hit triple digits this year.
Well, some people are bullish on the White Sox winning 100 for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, and they do, and you know what? The White Sox benefit from a Central that's not great.
It's
You
like
know,
all of them are like, and the talking rivals guys were speaking. They're all question marks. I mean, you got
Cleveland's not going to be great because they don't have a good lineup. Kansas City's got some nice young pieces, but they're not going to be that great.
Yeah, they're not ready yet.
Minnesota, I don't know what to make.
Minnesota's to me like the Cleveland Browns of Major
Minnesota's
League
another
Baseball.
one.
They made the splash by signing Carlos Correa, but their pitching
I don't know. I don't know. I think
questionable.
Yeah.
The team to really watch as an up and coming team is the Detroit Tigers.
I agree with you about the Tigers.
They got some good young pitching. They signed Javi Baez. Eventually, top prospect Spencer Torkelson is going to make his way to the big leagues. He's going to have a huge impact on this roster. They're the only team who might even be closest to 500.
I was going to say, if I would have said that,
division.
So, maybe by default, based on the division, the White Sox at 100, but I don't know about that. I'm still not quite sold on them totally. And they're sitting at a 92.5 over under.
And before I get to Chris, and I'm almost going to make you laugh. I mean, what's the Orioles handle? 57?
61 and a half.
All right, that was close.
Let me see if I find anything lower.
The Pirates, maybe? The Pirates or the Marlins would be in the 60s, right? Right.
Not the Marlins.
Pittsburgh 64 and a half. Miami
70 something.
77 and a half.
Wow. Okay. All right.
But you know what? But Miami's got a lot of good young pitching. They signed Jorge Soler, I believe. Their lineup's not bad. The Marlins are not going to be a pushover. The Nationals are probably going to be the worst.
The Mets always have trouble with the Marlins.
Well,
so
we know that. The Nationals are going to be the clear-cut worst team in the division. The Marlins are going to be very competitive. The Phillies are going to be a great lineup with no pitching.
No defense.
The Phillies will be fun to watch. We're going to get lynched for saying this, but I'm looking forward to watching Phillies games.
Oh yeah, And look, there might be a day or two where they could figure an outfield of Castellanos, Schwarber, and Harper somewhere in left center.
They might listen before I get to Chris. They might score like 850 runs and might give up like 830 runs. I mean, that's the kind of
thing behind Zach Wheeler. It's a bunch of question marks. Aaron Nola had a really down year last year, and people in the Phillies organization are down on Aaron Nola. So behind Zach Wheeler, you don't really have a lot in your
lot of question marks.
Are you really going to rely on Ranger Suarez as your number 3? I'm not so sold on him.
No, I wouldn't be either. And Bill Mazier says Keith Hernandez would be the dream hitting instructor. He won't leave the booth. Yeah, well, that's we've heard that for a bunch of different times, and always love hearing from Bill Mazier. I mean, Chris, obviously some interesting stuff there. I mean, I know you were talking about this on the Talking Rivals show, obviously with Patrick, but give me your thoughts on maybe some projections here, Yankees and Mets, and a few things you're watching going into opening day here next week.
Yeah, I think the Yankees, they're going to be in the mix for the division with Toronto, Tampa Bay, Boston. I think they're all going to be right around 90 games plus each. I'm big on Toronto. Patrick is not.
Wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, he thinks they're going to be like San Diego last year. But I like Toronto. Their lineup is obviously stacked. Their rotation.
I think Tampa Bay took a step down. I think that's why they're all even. If things kind of.
I don't want to say that because every year I say that, and then
next thing you know, they win 90.
Yeah, I that's why I'm not saying it about them.
Right, but they won closer to 100, and I don't think they're going to win closer to 100.
Right. I just think it's going to be a much tighter race this
year. Exactly.
The team I think that has a chance to take a step down is Boston. Because you got Sale's going to be out for at least a month, and I don't love their bullpen either. That's the part that I'm a little shaky on. Their lineup's pretty solid, but
especially with the additional Story.
Right, exactly.
But Boston doesn't have a ton of pitching. You had to, gun to my head. Where would you say that the Red Sox finished? I say 4th place.
I mean, I can still see them winning close to 90 games or 90 games easily too.
But I think they're the 4th best team in the division. I think Toronto I think right now Toronto's clear and above everybody else in the American League East. They're the best team.
Right.
And, honestly, the way Tampa Bay operates, I could flip-flop them Yankees 2 and 3 right now. I mean,
And you know what?
The way Tampa operates, they find ways to accidentally
Yeah,
win
they
90-plus games.
They could use one of us on that team, and they'll figure it out. They'll put us and we'll pitch well for them.
Let me ask you a follow-up on the Yankees, Chris. Is it, before I get to the brute force, is it fair, though, to say that you could make a case for any 4 of those teams in the AL East to actually win the division in Boston, Tampa, Toronto, and Yankees?
No doubt. I think we even said that, too, on the show. You could easily make a case for any one of those teams. And to be honest, how bad Baltimore is, or, compared to the other teams, they're going to play a huge part in who wins the division, because whoever does the best against Baltimore is probably going to have that, 1 or 2.
You're going to have to go 15-3, 14-4.
Yeah, what was it last year? Tampa Bay went 18-1.
Yeah. And we didn't play as good
against Baltimore. It wasn't too good.
We were like 500 against Baltimore.
Yeah.
Just above or right around it. So I think they're going to play a big part. And the Mets are going to be, listen, maybe they're not going to win the division now because DeGrom's going to be out a couple of months, whatever. But they should be able to get a wild card. I think so.
I mean, with the 3 wild cards, I mean, you still got to say Atlanta's the favorite in the division. They did get a solid replacement for Freddie Freeman with Matt Olson.
Yeah, they did pretty good there.
Philly, you're just way too concerned about their pitching. I feel like even with their lineup, they're 500 waiting to happen, because you can't really trust, and you can't trust their bullpen either. I mean, you telling me Jerry's Familia in a big spot at that ballpark? No.
Yeah, listen, they could score 850 runs and give up 830 runs.
It's brutal.
I mean, you got to think about wild cards. Obviously, you assume St. Louis and Milwaukee will be good in the Central, right? That's a fair assumption to make.
Yep.
You've got the Dodgers. We expect them to be locked in the West. You expect San Francisco to still be good. I don't think they're going to win 100.
You know what? I'm not too sold.
I don't know.
I'm not too sold. They lose Kevin Gausman. They had Chris Bryant for half a season. They lose him. Buster Posey retired. You had a lot of older veterans like
Brandon San Diego then make the step back up then?
Maybe this is the year that they finally get back in there.
I would say San Diego's got to make a big move this year.
Okay, I mean, I think those are some storylines to watch there. I mean, Brute Force, everybody always wants to hear what you have to say, especially after the last rant you had there. I mean, I hope you have something left here for the last few minutes of the show. But what's your thoughts on Mets and Yankees and their win totals, and anything else you're looking at going into opening day next week?
Yeah, so I'll actually start with the Yankees since we started with them before. And listen, first of all, I'm looking at the much beloved Pacoda projected standings, which are always just out of control. And Pacoda has the Yankees winning 98.5 games, which I think is absolutely absurd in my opinion. In my opinion, I think that's what Toronto should be projected to win this year. I'm with Chris. I'm a big Toronto guy. I think this team is going to be one of the best teams in the major leagues this year. I'll go that far. I really like them. They've upgraded that pitching staff. Their young players now have experience, are ready to go. They've added pieces. So, I mean, I can't really find a flaw in Toronto. Maybe their bullpen, but I think they're not even that bad there. So, I see Toronto as that 98-win team. I see the Yankees kind of hovering around 90, like you guys have previously said. But I could see them being below 90 not only because of, you guys mentioned the Baltimore Orioles, so they will win, but remember how the Yankees play against the Tampa Bay Rays. They really struggle against Tampa Bay.
What was it, 6-12 or 5-13?
I mean, the last couple seasons, Tampa Bay has absolutely dominated the Yankees. And again, like you guys said, I mean, they just have they have the number, but they also find ways. They find young pitchers that do a great job and mow down lineups. They find bats that produce, whether they're names that we know or names that we don't know. They always find a way. So I see Tampa being the second team in the division, and I see the Yankees being third. So I'm not exactly confident in the Yankees particularly winning 90 games. I could see it being 86 to 88 and the Rays winning 90 games. So, again, it's going to be competitive. The Red Sox will be right there as well. So that'll be fun, and we'll see. Bacota's got 61 wins for Baltimore. Let's see if let's just see if that's attainable at this point for Baltimore. Now, to get back to the NL East with the Mets, I do think it's going to be very close between the Mets and the Braves. I know that everybody's going to say now that DeGrom's going to be out, that's going to affect the Mets. And again, it will, but I think that they'll find rotation. The big question with the Mets, and we didn't talk about it earlier, in my opinion, is going to be the play of Francisco Lindor. I think look at him in spring training. I mean, once again, and this is worrying me, by the way, once again, he's doing amazing in spring training, just like he did last year. He's hitting home runs. He's getting RBIs. He's getting on base.
That reminds me, and Chris will appreciate this. Chris, remember when the Jets had Browning Nagel? He had like one preseason where he had like 14 touchdown passes, and then it was like he had the one great game to start the season, and it was like I don't know if he ever threw a touchdown again afterwards.
No.
Yeah. So I mean that's kind of what the brute force is trying to say. Francisco Lindor is in a
and think
in a
about it, he
rather
just missed Brett Favre, right?
Yep.
So I think the impact of Lindor is going to be huge for this team, especially early on. If he could get going and he could be the player, even close to the player that he's capable of, he's going to get out.
Last month of the season, Lindor, again, I think he had 7 or 8 home runs the last month of the season. So
Yeah,
I know a lot of it was
bad year, hit 20 home runs and drove, I think, like close to 60.
Yeah, he's got
and he missed like 6 weeks. I mean, to be fair, he had like 20 home runs and 60 RBI. And
then right now, the reason why I mentioned him too is because he's projected to be that number 3 hitter right in the middle of that lineup. So it's going to be very important. And obviously, you have guys like Nimmo, going to get on base.
I think Nimmo to me is more the wild card on this team because he just never stays healthy. When he's in there, he makes that lineup better throughout the last 4 or 5 years, but he never can consistently stay healthy.
No. Yeah, and him and then Starling Marte as well is going to be the same thing. Can he stay healthy? Can he be on the field? When he is, he's very good. So the Mets lineup, I think, stacks up with the Braves. I think that the rotations, obviously having Scherzer in the rotation and DeGrom eventually is going to be huge. So I think that's neck and neck race. I think both teams will be over 90 wins. It's just a matter of who probably gets the head-to-head. And then in our division, like Justin said, the weak team is going to be the Nationals. That first series between the Mets and Nationals, first 4 games are going to be important for the Mets to get off to a good start against the Nationals because they're the team you got to beat up on this year if you want to win. So that's the case. And then I actually love Justin's take on the Phillies because I think the Miami Marlins are going to be right with the Phillies. I don't think that. Yes, I think the Marlins get too much disrespect. Even though they, listen, they've obviously been mediocre. They've gotten better over the last couple of years, and their pitching is very good. And I think the pitching gets kind of oversaw. Their starting pitching is good, and their lineup is respectable. I mean, you saw their lineup in spring training against Scherzer, and they have a good lineup from top to bottom. So I like the Marlins winning and being a team that's over 500 this year and contending with the Phillies with that, 80-ish range, 82 to 85 win teams. I think that both of them are going to be right there, and it could potentially come down to who plays better at the end of the season and who's going to make the playoffs. And I just think, like Justin said, I was watching the Phillies spring training against the Yankees a few days ago. Yeah, Bryce Harper's hitting home runs. Yeah, they're smoking balls out of the park, and their lineup look amazing. But you watch Familia, you watch Brad Hand, you watch Hector Neris. And
the Phillies are becoming, and I'm going to get so lynched for saying this, but when in wrestling in the 90s, when all the wrestlers were in WWF and went to WCW, all the Met pitchers are almost going to the Phillies. It's almost like WWF and WCW. It's almost like a joke.
So, and I mean, listen, last year, last time I checked, my good friend Bryce Harper was the MVP of the National League and didn't even make the playoffs last year.
So last week's show, yeah.
So he could have an MVP season and they could have players perform, but it just shows that their pitching is so weak that
they kind of scream like 83 and 79. They just scream like Justin said.
Because also, who do you trust out of the bullpen? like Brad said, Brad Hand, Jerry's Familia,
Jose Alvarado.
Jose Alvarado, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Corey Knable. I mean, it's really it's not a great bullpen.
Joe Girardi's going to certainly have to have the Pepto-Bismol in the Rolaids.
Oh, yeah.
nearby.
And you're looking at guys like Zach Eflin and Kyle Gibson rounding out their starting rotation. I mean, it doesn't really instill that much confidence in me.
Yeah, so I mean, again, the Phillies are an interesting team to watch. We get the Phillies play the Mets the second series of the season after the Nationals, so that'll be interesting to see that series. And then I guess I'll make one more comment. You guys talked about a few teams, but I'm gonna actually go to the AL West for a second. I think that's an interesting division. When you have Houston, obviously in that division, but no more Correa. Yeah, they've gotten some pieces, but I think it's going to be more of a competitive division. I think Seattle, has gotten better, and they were a team that was in the mix last year. The Angels, if they could somehow figure out a pitching staff, obviously they got our friend Noah Syndergaard there now. Again, if they could figure out pitching, they have hitting. So, if they could figure it out. So I think, and then again, the Texas Rangers, they got,
I think that's the team. Good point.
So they got Seager, they got Simeon from Toronto. So they have a team, too, that could compete. So I think that's a division that no one's really talking about as much as they should, but I think that's going to be a competitive division this year.
And the Talking Rivals guys, and it was a great, phenomenal show this past week where they talked about all these things. Kind of spoke about the Angels in a way, and they've certainly got the chips. They've got the big pieces. But, again, kind of like the Phillies.
Yeah, they don't have the pitching.
That's where they're going to end up, probably in the middle of the pack. And I think the Seattle Mariners, I could not agree with you more, but I think that's the team that's to keep an eye on here. If they finally break that postseason drought here, last time they were in the postseason 2001 here, and our old friend Ron Laird checks in about DeGrom, and we answered that. We beat that with a dead horse, and obviously DeGrom is certainly the really, really interesting $1 million question and some here with the Mets. And the Mets, again, have a big question mark here with that. But, again, I think looking at it here before we get out of here tonight, obviously a lot of storylines here to look forward to here. Yankees, I think, will be once again in the middle of the pack, middle of discussion here, should be back to the postseason. Mets, again, they should be a team that's competitive. They were in first place for 90-something days last year. Obviously, wheels fell off in the second half, but they did make the big move here with Scherzer and Mark Canha and Marte, so they should be improved. But again, you've got the Braves, the defending world champions, and they're no pushovers. And we'll see about the Phillies. And some of the guys are convincing me here about the Miami Marlins, that maybe the Marlins are a team that shouldn't be slept upon. Then you've got in the American League, got some interesting teams that the Talking Rivals guys spoke about, and the Tigers, and they went out there and they're an emerging team. And you've got teams like the Royals that might be on the cusp. And then you got teams like Texas. And then again, the team that I just find so fascinating, actually, maybe the team I find the most fascinating in all of baseball, it's not even the New York Mets, is the Minnesota Twins. Because this is a team that made some moves here, but again, I don't know if it's almost like it's combustible. It's just, again, it's a really, really intriguing situation. They could either all of a sudden be right there to being back in the postseason, as they always do, and probably get swept by the Yankees, or all of a sudden be 70 and 90, and it was a disaster of an experiment. So we're all happy that baseball's coming back here next week. Excited to be speaking about that. It's a great time to be a sports fan. You got Masters next week. You've got Final Four weekend here. You've got NBA playoffs coming up, NHL playoffs with the Rangers, NFL draft. I'll even throw it out there. USFL starts in 2 weeks. And, of course, tomorrow for me and a lot of people who are wrestling fans, WrestleMania 38, it's a 2-day festival. I remember as a kid, it was just 3 hours like a pay-per-view, and you had maybe like a half hour of previews on pay-per-view, but now it's literally a 2-day event and some. So we'll be speaking about that tomorrow starting at 11 o'clock Eastern time with the Rewind Wrestling Gang and, of course, the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast team. Chris Belcher just messaged me. He'll be in the house with us at 12 o'clock. So much stuff going on here. So thankful that everybody continues to support Sportswire Radio and all of our great family of shows like the Baseball Banter. Talking Rivals, Liftoff Jets. And that brings me here to closing thoughts here. And Justin, I'm going to give you the floor, my friend. Anything you want to plug, anything you want to share. I know we have a baseball banter show. I think you mentioned it on the air that you and John will be doing one here shortly, I guess at some point this weekend. So I want to give you the floor, my friend. I can't thank you enough. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for another great week, Tom. So tomorrow we're going to do our official season preview, kind of give our thoughts on, again, the Mets and the Yankees, where things go from here with the Mets and DeGrom. Kind of look at who the top contenders are, and and how each division is going to end up stacking up. Again, like we talked about, the AL East is going to be the most fascinating with the 4 top teams, and the NL East, with some good teams as well, but with some more flaws in the American League team. So, we'll get into all that tomorrow. You can follow my Twitter at JGNLE12 and the Baseball Banter page at BBallBanter SM.
Absolutely all great work. Another great show this week, Justin. I really enjoyed it. Got to listen to it a couple different times, and that's always good. And Chris, I want to give you the floor, my friend. Anything you want to plug, anything you want to share. I'm looking forward to also hearing the Liftoff Jets show tomorrow night. Very, very excited to personally get to hear that, what you and Charmin have to say. I know you said to me that it's going to be a little bit of a boring show this week. It's going to be a little less shorter, but I think it's going to be still just as good a show. And everybody, of course, can listen to it here on sportnarium.com/player, but I want to give you the floor. Anything you want to share, anything you want to plug, and can't thank you enough. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, guys. Had a great night as always. Talking Rivals will be on Monday. We're going to preview the National League before the season starts. And then Wednesday, me and Charmin will be doing the Talking Rivals, Liftoff Jets, and we're going to be previewing the draft. We're going to be doing the linebackers this week, and then the following week we finish up with the cornerbacks and the safeties, and then the following week we'll do a mock draft right before the draft and get that done. So you can look for the Talking Rivals at Talking Rivals on Twitter and on YouTube and everywhere else the show's on. The Liftoff at Liftoff Jets on Twitter, and you can follow me at CP7NY.
Excellent work. Looking forward to hearing all of that. Again, it proves my point that NFL is year-round talk. I don't know if you call it hot stove. I don't know if you call it spring talk, barbecue
just
talk.
The NFL. It's just
NFL. It's. I just remember, again, being a kid like 20 years ago, it was the Super Bowl was over. You didn't even think about football until training camp. But now it's like
every week it's something else.
Exactly. So it's just a totally different world. I'm looking forward to hearing all that great content from you. Again, Talking Rivals, excellent work that you and Patrick do. And of course, talkingrivals.com, we can find clips, we can find information on the show. We can get you guys also on Anchor, I know. We can get you on Spotify, iTunes, and Northeast Streaming Sports Channel as well. I know Justin's on other platforms like our old friend Joe Sokoa, of course, with Sokoa Media. I know Joe Sokoa just had a baby, and congratulations to Joe. And Joe's an interesting guy, a little bit more controversial for my taste, but certainly Joe is a little. Justin knows what I'm talking about, but that's an inside baseball thing. But Joe's a good guy, and he's on there also. Justin for the Sokoa Media. Just want to make sure if you're out there, you can go check him out there. But of course on sportnarium.com/player, and certainly we can't say we saved the best for last, but we certainly did save the biggest for last, as always. Always look forward to hearing closing thoughts from the legendary Mr. Brute Force of the LA Brew Crew. I'm sure we'll get a Brew Crew update in here and social media plugs and anything else. And I turn it over to you, my friend. You know the drill. You've been here for over 2 years, so fire away.
Yeah, Tom, thank you for another edition of Sportzwire here, Friday Night Live. Certainly was a lot of fun. Justin, Chris, thank you as always for coming on. Always a great time. You guys can follow me, of course, on Facebook, searching Bradley Weiss, on Twitter at BradWeiss20, and on Instagram at BWeiss20. You won't regret the follow, and you won't regret seeing my New York Knicks rants. They're definitely funny. They're even making my own self laugh. So that's crazy in its own right. But
and Steve Sappers, I have to say, he called me tonight. Actually, he actually mentioned the Instagram. He saw the Instagram story, and he actually called to tell me, because he usually calls me and says, "Oh, I want to tell you, have a good show. I was like, yeah, all right, Steve, thanks. And he actually said he was purposely going to watch the show to hear you talk about the New York Knicks. So Steve was very happy that you were. He was waiting for this.
Hey, listen, that's what it's all about. And, I'm happy that I can certainly excite people to listen to our clips and listen to our show. So thank you to all our great supporters. Certainly our North Carolina supporters on Tobacco Road Sports. Hopefully you guys have a good weekend. I know there's going to be some craziness in North Carolina with UNC and Duke, but enjoy it. Whoever you're rooting for, I wish you guys the best in that rivalry. I will say, I want to give a shout out as well to the women's bracket as UConn and Gino Auriemma once again going to the big game. This year they had challenges. Paige Beckers was out for a while. Yep. She's their best player, and she comes back in the playoffs, so she can't miss. And today they go against a really good team in Stanford, and they get the job done. And then South Carolina also got the job done. Aaliyah Boston's one of the best players I've ever seen, the best big girls that we've seen in women's basketball coming out of college. So that's going to be a really exciting final matchup between UConn and South Carolina. So I want to give a shout out to the women's side of the bracket here. I did pick UConn, so I am looking good.
I picked UConn to win it all too. I actually got 3 of the 4 Final Four teams correct in the women's bracket. The only one that I didn't get right was Baylor. I thought.
Yeah, me too. It's actually funny. Me too. I picked Baylor too. So
you guys were alike on this, not so much on the men's, but on this you were like, that's good.
We agree. So that's perfectly fine. I also agree as well with Justin on last night's Nets game. That was definitely a tough loss for the Nets, but a very good game in its own right between Milwaukee and Brooklyn. You can't help but say you would wish to see that in a playoff series very soon. But very good game. I'm looking forward to the NBA playoffs because the next time we'll be speaking, we'll be getting very close to that as well. As per what everyone wants to hear, of course, I know there's people out there that want to know how did the brute force do on the softball field last weekend. And I will say, ladies and gentlemen, I had a decent day. I was 4 for 8 on the day. I hit a home run, my first home run of the spring season over the center field fence. And I had 3 singles. But I also recorded the Brew Crew's first strikeout of the season. I couldn't help myself but strike out, of course, the softball.
Well, you told me that after the game. I couldn't help but laugh when you told me that on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be someone. Always someone's got it, and it seems like it's always me. So, in the end, it is what it is. I hit for the fences, and I missed one. So, but it was fun. We split the series with Baldwin. We're playing again this weekend, even though we're probably going to get rained out. But
it does not look good. The weather the first half of the day looks terrible.
No, it's definitely not exciting, but it's a very exciting Brew Crew season. Even though we'll get postponed this weekend, we'll be back the following weekend, and I'm just looking forward to hitting many more home runs pretty far. So it was very fun. Our free agent acquisitions, I mean, my God, John LaRocca was like 7 for 8 with 2 home runs and like 8 RBIs in his first game and hit the game winner in the first one. So Cole Masler was doing great. So our guys are definitely ready for some Brew Crew softball, and they're great additions. And the last thing I'll say, I'll just give them a shout out because, as you guys can see, I got my fresh cut today. And, of course, that's Sal the Barber, of course. You can follow him on Instagram at Sal the Barber 91. He's in Hicksville at Michael's Barber Shop. Great barber, always does a great job. So I want to give him a shout out here as I do every time I get a fresh cut from him.
And speaking of Hicksville, got to give a happy belated birthday to somebody you know, Miss Kelly Dempsey.
That's right. Kelly was actually I was actually at the Long Island Nets game on Tuesday, and Kelly's great organization called Making Waves for Girls Basketball was honored at the Long Island Nets game. It was Women's Empowerment Night when I was there. So Kelly's doing amazing work with that. You guys should also give that a follow as well on every social media platform.
KED training as well on Instagram.
Definitely she's doing a great job, and she's obviously someone that means a lot to me. She's given me a lot of these great opportunities. So give a shout out to Kelly. I can't thank you guys enough. I'm looking forward to next week, and I'm really looking forward to not talking about the New York Knicks ever again until we have to in the future.
And before we get out of here, I'm really looking forward to when a Brew Crew game is played when it's either not 30 degrees or it's raining, because you guys
Oh.
have like the worst luck. I mean, seriously, like April Fool's has come with the weather because it's almost like winter again. I mean, you're going to be playing well, not playing at all, but and last year we had so many rainouts last year. Remember last year there
Yes.
was like rainouts through like every other day. It was like you guys played Wednesdays and Sundays and the games were rained out. And last week it was snowing. This week it's raining. I mean, just you guys have horrific luck. I'm trying to remember the days when my father had a friend and he used to play softball over at Dyker Park. We'd watch it. It was like 80 degrees. It was a nice day. We'd go out afterwards. We'd have a burger. And it was fun. You guys play at the softball fields down there in Long Island, whether it's Eisenhower Park or by Jones Beach, and it's like it rains every week. I mean, how could I even watch you if it's going to rain every Sunday? So we'll figure it out. Listen, we'll get to all that great stuff. Obviously, I want to thank everybody that's tuned in here tonight. And off the air here, you'll get the sit-down marks. They'll be on and they'll talk all the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling. They'll have a guest also. They'll get everybody ready for WrestleMania 38. And one more time, baseball banter you can hear this weekend. Liftoff Jets you can hear this weekend. Talking Rivals. We'll have an all-new Talking Rivals for us this Monday. We'll also have a baseball banter show ahead, and we'll also be live again from 11 to 1 tomorrow, talking all things related to WrestleMania 38 with the Rewind Wrestling Gang and, of course, the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. So really, really looking forward to that. In fact, I'm going to have to adjust my sleep patterns for that, so we'll see how that works as well. But I want to thank everybody again for watching and listening to this. So I want to thank Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, Chris Bezea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals Show, and, of course, the man with the fresh cut. Thanks to our dear friend, Mr. Sal the Barber in beautiful Hicksville. That is the brute force Brad Wise. I guess you could say maybe New York Knicks fan, but certainly you can say legendary St. Joseph's, Long Island, Golden Eagles men's basketball player, where he is near the top of the list all time in school history and block shots, 25th in rebounds, also a coach for the Level Up Basketball Organization, player for our LI Brew Crew. Of course, follow the team on Instagram at LI Brew Crew, Level Up Basketball Organization, Long Island Nets, and the head coach for our Plainview JFK Hawks boys JV basketball team. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. I want to thank everybody, and we'll be back on 12:30 p.m. So if you missed the show tonight, you can catch us today, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Desmond Johnson's Tobacco Road Sports Radio.com station. Thank you, Des, for that as always. And good night, everyone. We'll be back with you tomorrow morning on Sportswire Radio. Thank you. Good night. We'll be back here tomorrow morning. All right. So that's disconnected. And